You're exactly where you need to be right now. As you settle into comfort, let me take you on a journey back through time to a moment that changed everything for humanity. A moment that's about to repeat itself. 40,000 years ago, deep in what we now call Siberia, an Ice Age family gathered around their fire as the sun disappeared below the horizon. The father, weathered and strong from years of survival, was the first to notice something strange in the darkening sky. A faint shimmer appeared above them, like oil spreading across water, colors that shouldn't exist in the evening sky. He said nothing at first, but his eyes tracked the phenomenon with the careful attention of someone who had learned that unusual things in nature often preceded danger. The children pressed closer to their mother, not from fear exactly, but from that ancient instinct we all still carry, the one that makes us seek comfort when something unfamiliar appears. The mother wrapped her arms around them, her touch communicating what words couldn't, that same reassurance you might have received as a child, that everything would be all right. They didn't know it yet, sitting there in the gathering darkness, but they were about to witness the beginning of a disaster that would reshape their world for the next 1,000 years. Feel yourself there with them for a moment, the crackling of the fire sending sparks into the night air, the weight of animal skin blankets across your shoulders, heavy and warm, the cold pressing in from just beyond the cave entrance, held back only by the flickering flames. This family represents us in the most fundamental way. They loved like we love. They feared like we fear. They protected their children with the same fierce dedication that echoes through every generation, right down to today, right down to you. As they watched the sky that night, they couldn't have known what was coming. But something deep in their consciousness, something that still lives in you, recognized that change was arriving. The same disaster they witnessed is cycling back. Scientists have discovered patterns in the Earth itself, geological records that repeat across millennia, like the heartbeat of the planet. What happened to them will happen again, not in some distant future beyond imagining, but within our lifetime, within your lifetime. Yet by understanding how they survived, we gain something more valuable than any modern technology. We gain wisdom that has been tested by the ultimate teacher, survival itself. These weren't primitive people fumbling in the dark. They were us, with the same intelligence, the same capacity for innovation, the same determination to protect what matters. And they won. They survived something we're only beginning to understand. Let your mind drift with theirs as their night unfolds. You're safe here in this moment, learning from ancestors who faced the unimaginable and adapted. Your body already knows how to relax into ancient stories like this. For 300,000 years, humans have gathered around fires and shared knowledge through narrative. Your nervous system recognizes this pattern, this rhythm of voice and story and darkness, and begins to respond the way it was designed to respond, by letting go of the day's tension and preparing for rest. What they saw in the sky that night wouldn't be understood for 40,000 years. Not until satellites and instruments and scientists with advanced degrees could piece together what had happened. But those Ice Age people didn't need to understand it scientifically to respond effectively. They had something we've partially lost and desperately need to reclaim, the ability to observe, adapt, and survive without needing complete understanding first. The shimmer grew over the next hours. What started as a faint distortion became visible curtains of light, auroras, but not the green dancing ribbons they were accustomed to seeing. These were deep reds and purples, colors that seemed wrong somehow, as if the sky itself was bruising. The father finally spoke, his voice low and measured. He called the rest of the clan from their individual fires. Within minutes, the entire extended family stood together at the cave entrance. 40 people ranging from infants to elders, all watching the sky transform into something none of them had witnessed before. This is where our story truly begins. This is the moment when a disaster that would last a millennium first announced itself, and this is the moment that's preparing to repeat as the same forces that change their sky begin changing ours. The magnetic field that protects Earth from cosmic radiation, the invisible shield that makes life possible on the surface of this planet, was beginning to fail them. And it's beginning to fail us, but here's what matters most as you drift deeper into this story. They survived. Through everything that was about to happen, through changes that would destroy the great animals of their world and reshape the climate itself, they survived. And they didn't just survive through luck or chance. They survived through adaptation, innovation, cooperation, and psychological resilience. The same tools available to you right now. Feel the weight of that truth as you breathe slowly. You are descended from survivors of this disaster. The blood in your veins, the DNA in every cell of your body, comes from people who faced what's coming and won. You carry their victory inside you, genetic advantages they earned through hardship, so that you would be stronger.
This isn't just a story about the past.
This is a story about you, about where you came from, about why you're built the way you are. As that Ice Age family watched the sky continue to change, as the mysterious lights pulsed and shifted through colors no human had seen before, they made a choice. They chose to face the unknown together. They chose to observe rather than panic. They chose to trust in their ability to adapt to whatever was coming. That choice, repeated across thousands of nights and hundreds of generations, is why you exist today. It's why you're here, breathing steadily, preparing for rest, carrying ancient strength you haven't fully discovered yet. Let yourself sink a little deeper into comfort now. The ancient warning has been given. The disaster has announced itself, but so has something else. So has the human capacity to endure anything, to find wisdom in crisis, to emerge stronger from whatever the universe presents. You're about to learn how they did it, and in learning, you'll discover capabilities in yourself you didn't know were there, waiting patiently across 40,000 years for the moment they'd be needed again. Your breath is finding its own natural rhythm as we move deeper into this ancient story. Let yourself continue to relax as we watch what happened over the next 3 nights, as the shimmer in the sky transformed into something unprecedented. On the second night, the entire clan gathered again without needing to be called. Children who normally needed coaxing to settle down sat quietly, instinctively understanding that something significant was unfolding. The auroras had intensified. What started as mysterious colors had become pulsing curtains of light that dominated the entire sky from horizon to horizon. Deep reds flowed like blood through the atmosphere. Purples so dark they almost disappeared into black, formed and reformed in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, almost alive. The elder members of the clan, those who had survived through 60 winters and more, exchanged glances heavy with meaning. They had seen many things in their long lives. They had witnessed droughts that killed the rivers and winters so harsh that even the strongest hunters struggled to find game. But this was beyond their experience, beyond even the oldest stories passed down from their own elders. One grandmother, her face a map of survival etched in wrinkles, spoke the words others were thinking. She had never seen the sky behave this way. None of them had. Feel yourself there with them, wrapped in furs against the cold that pressed in from the darkness. Imagine the mixture of awe and uncertainty. The sky had always been predictable, something to read for weather signs and navigation. But now it was speaking in a language no one understood. The children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. Why were the lights so red?
What did it mean?
Would it stop? And the parents, doing what parents have done since the first humans walked upright, offered comfort, even while experiencing their own uncertainty. They held their children close and said what needed to be said. We're together.
We're watching.
We'll understand as we need to. By the third night, the phenomenon had grown even more intense, and something else became apparent. The herds were changing their behavior. The mammoth that normally grazed in the valley to the east hadn't been seen for 2 days. Reindeer that followed ancient migration routes with the precision of living calendars were moving in confused circles. Birds flew in erratic patterns, sometimes colliding with each other mid-flight as if their navigation systems had been scrambled. The natural world was responding to something the humans could observe but not yet comprehend. What they were witnessing, though they had no way to name it, was the magnetic field of Earth beginning to shift. Scientists today call it a geomagnetic excursion, an event where the planet's magnetic poles weaken dramatically or even flip completely. The last major one occurred precisely 42,000 years ago. And the data we're collecting now, the measurements from satellites and ground stations across the globe, show another one is beginning. The pattern is identical. The timeline matches. The early warning signs they saw are appearing again in our own sky, visible to anyone paying attention. Let your eyes close if they haven't already, as you imagine, standing with those ancient people. Feel the wonder mixed with that edge of concern. They understood they were witnessing something rare, something that would become part of the stories they told for generations. But they couldn't know yet how deeply it would change their world.
How the beautiful, terrifying lights in the sky were
Just the first visible symptom of changes that would challenge everything they knew about survival. Your breathing is slowing naturally as you sink into their experience. This is how human consciousness has always worked, processing information through story, through shared experience, through the gradual building of understanding. You don't need to force anything. Just let the knowledge flow in the way water flows downhill, following the natural path your mind creates for it. Over those 3 nights, something began to form in the collective awareness of the clan, a recognition that the world was entering a new phase, that the old certainties might not hold, that adaptation would be required. They didn't panic. They didn't fall into despair. Instead, they did what humans do when faced with the unknown. They observed. They discussed. They began making small adjustments to their routines, testing different approaches, sharing information between families. The shamans performed rituals, not because they believed spirits could stop what was happening, but because ritual serves a deeper purpose. It creates psychological cohesion. It reduces the stress hormones that flood the body during uncertainty. It binds the community together through shared meaning-making. Modern psychology confirms what Ice Age humans intuited. That group ritual is a survival technology, a way of maintaining mental health and social bonds during crisis. They were already adapting, already using psychological tools to maintain resilience in the face of change. As you drift deeper now, feel the continuity between their experience and yours. The same stars they saw still wheel overhead. The same moon that lit their anxious watching still rises each night. And the same human capacity for observation, adaptation, and courage that kept them steady during those 3 nights of changing sky lives in you. It's not metaphorical. It's literal. The genes that coded for resilience, for the ability to maintain calm during uncertainty, for the capacity to adapt rather than freeze, those genes were selected for during the crisis they were entering. And you carry them now. The magnetic field that protected them was vanishing. Within months, it would drop to just 6% of its normal strength. The invisible shield that deflects cosmic radiation, that makes the surface of Earth safe for complex life, was failing. But they didn't know that yet. They only knew the sky had changed, the animals were confused, and something unprecedented was beginning. Their journey through disaster was just starting. But so was their journey through adaptation, innovation, and the kind of determined survival that would echo forward through 40,000 years to reach you tonight as you rest in the safety their endurance created. Let yourself sink deeper into comfort, knowing that what happened next in their story is being preserved in your genetic memory, waiting to activate when needed. The sky changed everything, but humans changed too in ways that made you possible. Feel your body settling more deeply now as we move forward through time. 6 months have passed since those first strange lights appeared. The Ice Age humans have adapted to the new auroras. They've become part of the nightly sky, almost normal now. But other changes are beginning to manifest, changes that cut deeper than unusual lights, changes that affect survival itself. The hunting parties noticed it first, those small groups of skilled trackers who spent their days ranging far from the caves. Animals were behaving strangely in ways that went beyond confused migration. Deer would stand in open clearings at midday, something they never did, as if disoriented. Wolves hunted at wrong times with poor coordination. Even the insects seemed affected, with bees abandoning their established patterns and flying in erratic spirals. The hunters returned with stories that troubled the elders. The natural world, which had always operated with predictable rhythms, was losing its rhythm. Then the sun itself seemed to change. On clear days, when the sky was that deep, Ice Age blue, unmarred by clouds, the sun felt different, harsher somehow, more burning. The people of the clan who spent long hours outside began experiencing something they'd never encountered before. Their skin, which usually tanned gradually and evenly from sun exposure, now blistered more easily. Their eyes watered when looking toward bright snow. Children who played outside all day came home with redness and pain that seemed disproportionate to the time they'd spent in sunlight. They couldn't know what was happening at a cosmic level. They couldn't know that Earth's magnetic shield had collapsed to just 6% of its normal strength. They couldn't know that cosmic radiation, those high-energy particles that stream constantly from the sun and deep space, usually deflected harmlessly by the magnetic field, were now penetrating the atmosphere and reaching the surface. They couldn't name it or measure it or understand the physics, but they could feel the effects, written on their skin and in the strange behavior of every living thing around them. Let yourself breathe with them as they grapple with this new reality. Imagine the slow, dawning realization that the world has fundamentally changed, that the safety they took for granted is no longer guaranteed. Yet notice something crucial about their response. They don't collapse in despair. They don't waste energy raging against circumstances they can't control. Instead, they do what survivors do. They observe the patterns, they share information, and they begin adapting their behavior to match the new conditions. The weather patterns shift dramatically within single seasons. A winter that starts mild suddenly plunges into brutal cold that kills unprepared game animals. A summer that promises abundance becomes a drought that dries up reliable water sources. The predictability that allowed them to plan seasons ahead crumbles. The Ice Age, already harsh, becomes more severe in ways that seem almost random. Scientists studying ice cores from this period find evidence of rapid climate chaos, temperature swings of 10 degrees within decades, precipitation patterns that shift wildly, all driven by the weakened magnetic field, allowing increased cosmic radiation to affect atmospheric chemistry. Your breathing is slow and steady as you rest in the understanding that even in this vulnerability they found ways forward. Even as their shield fell and radiation bombarded them, even as climate chaos disrupted the seasonal patterns their survival depended on, they adapted. They began changing their daily routines, spending more time in the protective shadows of caves and forests during peak sun hours. They developed new food storage techniques to buffer against unpredictable seasons. They shared knowledge more aggressively across clan networks, understanding that isolated information was less valuable than distributed knowledge. Today, our magnetic field has already weakened by 9% since measurements began in the 1800s. The protective shield that makes life on Earth's surface possible is fluctuating in patterns that mirror the beginning of the last excursion. Satellites malfunction with increasing frequency. Astronauts and high-altitude pilots receive higher radiation doses than predicted. The electrical grid experiences unexplained disturbances. Navigation systems that depend on the magnetic field show subtle but growing inaccuracies. We are, quite literally, watching the same pattern unfold that our Ice Age ancestors witnessed 42,000 years ago. But here's what matters as you drift deeper into restful understanding. They survived it. Through everything that was coming, all the changes that would cascade from this weakening shield, they endured and adapted. The proof is you breathing steadily right now, carrying their genes, their resilience coded into every cell. You are the evidence of their success, the living testament that humans can survive even when the planet's protective systems fail. Let your muscles release any remaining tension as you absorb this knowledge. The Ice Age humans discovered something profound during this crisis. They discovered that protection doesn't always come from external shields. Sometimes it comes from awareness, from adaptation, from the flexibility to change behavior when conditions change. Their world was being bombarded from space, yes. The invisible danger was real, but they developed visible, practical responses that worked. They began mapping safe zones, areas where natural formations provided additional protection from the harsh sun. They modified their clothing and shelter designs. They changed hunting patterns to account for the confused behavior of prey animals. Most importantly, they maintained psychological stability, that crucial foundation that allows for rational decision-making rather than panic. Each adaptation was small, each change was incremental, but together they added up to survival. As you sink deeper now, feel the weight of that inherited wisdom. When shields fall, adaptation rises. When external protection fails, internal resilience activates. This isn't just ancient history. This is your instruction manual for what's already beginning again. Let your consciousness drift a little deeper now as we focus on a specific moment of breakthrough. Sometimes in the midst of crisis, a single observation changes everything. Sometimes one person's awareness becomes the catalyst for collective survival. This is the story of how that happened 40,000 years ago, and what it teaches us about adapting to what's coming now. Her name has been lost to time, so we'll call her Kira, which means sunlight in an ancient language. She was young, perhaps 19 winters, with the sharp observational skills that sometimes come more easily to those not yet hardened by assumptions about how the world must work. While others accepted the new harshness of sunlight as simply another difficulty to endure, Kira began to notice patterns in where the discomfort was worst and where it seemed manageable. Feel yourself in her awareness as she makes her observations. She notices that the caves facing north provide more comfort during daytime than those facing south. The difference is subtle at first, easy to dismiss as imagination, but she pays attention to it anyway. She observes that clan members who spend more time in deeper cave systems report less skin burning and eye irritation than those who work primarily near cave entrances or in open areas.
Again, the difference is small but consistent.
And consistency in nature, she understands intuitively, usually points towards something meaningful. Kira does something remarkable. She experiments. She deliberately varies her own exposure patterns, spending some days deep in the caves and other days in the open, carefully noting how her body responds. She's conducting science without knowing the word for science, using empirical observation and testing to understand her environment. This is human intelligence at its finest, not requiring advanced instruments or formal education, just careful attention and willingness to question assumptions. Over several weeks, her observations crystallize into understanding. The position of the sun relative to cave openings matters. The depth of protective rock overhead matters. Time of day matters, with midday being more dangerous than morning or evening. She begins making recommendations to her clan. Sleep in the exposed areas at night, she suggests, when the moon's reflected light seems gentler. Retreat to deeper caves during the peak sun hours. Rotate through different work areas to minimize extended exposure to harsh conditions. Some of the elders resist at first. They've survived for decades using established patterns. Why change now? But Kira has something powerful on her side: results. The families who adopt her suggested patterns show visibly less sun sickness. Children who play in the protected zones have healthier skin. Hunters who shift their schedules to avoid peak radiation hours return with more energy and less distress. Evidence overcomes resistance, as it always eventually does. Breathe slowly as you feel the significance of this moment. This wasn't random luck. This was the birth of scientific observation applied to an existential threat. Without understanding radiation or magnetic fields or cosmic particles, without instruments or measurements or theory, they learned to read their environment and respond effectively. They couldn't control the weakening magnetic shield. They couldn't stop the cosmic radiation from penetrating the atmosphere. But they could control their behavior in response to those realities. Modern scientists studying ancient remains from this exact period find fascinating evidence. Skeletal remains show increased mutation rates, consistent with higher radiation exposure. They find markers of vitamin D deficiency, which seems paradoxical in a sunny environment until you understand that people were avoiding sun exposure. They find evidence of increased cancer rates in the populations. This was real biological stress, not imagined danger. The cosmic bombardment was causing measurable harm, but they also find something else. They find evidence of cultural innovation spreading rapidly, changes in shelter patterns appearing simultaneously across vast distances, cave art depicting unusual celestial events, the spread of new technologies for protection and survival. Most significantly, they find evidence that human populations remained stable through this period while megafauna populations collapsed. Humans adapted faster than the environmental changes could overwhelm them. Let yourself sink deeper into appreciation for this ancient innovation. Kira's simple observation that some locations provided more protection than others became a survival technology that spread through oral tradition across continents. The pattern she noticed was being noticed by sharp-minded individuals in other clans, other regions, other populations. Independently but simultaneously, humans everywhere were learning to read the new environmental realities and adjust accordingly. This is part of your inheritance: the ability to observe patterns in chaos, the capacity to test assumptions through experimentation, the willingness to change behavior based on evidence rather than clinging to familiar routines that no longer serve survival. These traits were selected for during the crisis. Humans who possessed them survived at higher rates. Humans who didn't, who remained rigid in the face of change, left fewer descendants or none at all. You carry Kira's observational genetics. You hold within you the capacity for exactly this kind of adaptive awareness. As our own magnetic shield weakens, as our own environment begins shifting in response to increased cosmic radiation and the cascade effects it triggers, the same observational skills that saved them become relevant again. Not metaphorically, literally. The same planetary crisis beginning the same way. Feel the comfort in that knowledge as you drift toward deeper rest. The solution isn't found in controlling cosmic forces beyond human scale. The solution is found in observation, adaptation, behavioral flexibility, and shared knowledge. They discovered that 40,000 years ago. We're rediscovering it now. And you, resting comfortably in this moment, carry the genetic optimization that made their discoveries possible. When the time comes, those instincts will activate. For now, simply rest in knowing they're there. Your breath continues its steady rhythm as we move deeper into their story. Feel yourself becoming more relaxed with each slow exhale. The weakened magnetic field had effects beyond harsh sunlight and confused animals. It transformed the very atmosphere itself in ways that made every storm an event of terrifying beauty and genuine danger. Cosmic rays, those high-energy particles normally deflected by Earth's magnetic shield, were now penetrating deep into the atmosphere. When these particles collided with air molecules, they created ionization, electrical charges accumulating in clouds and air masses. The result was an unprecedented increase in electrical storm activity. Lightning became more frequent, more intense, more unpredictable than anything the Ice Age people had experienced in their collective memory or stories. Imagine being there as the first of these new storms builds. You can feel it coming hours before the first lightning bolt. The air itself seems to press down with unusual weight. Your skin prickles with static electricity. The smell of ozone grows stronger, that sharp metallic scent that makes the back of your throat tighten. Animals that usually wait out storms in the open now flee frantically toward any shelter they can find, their instincts screaming danger before the human mind fully registers why. The Ice Age family we've been following huddles in their cave, children pressed against their parents, watching nature's fury unleash itself across the landscape. The lightning, when it comes, is not the single bolts they know from ordinary thunderstorms. These are continuous cascading strikes, multiple channels of electricity forking across the sky simultaneously. The thunder isn't the rolling rumble familiar from normal storms, but sharp explosions that hurt the ears and shake dust from the cave ceiling. The children are frightened, but their parents' calm presence teaches them something crucial.
Storms pass.
Fear is temporary. Safety is found in preparation and wisdom. Let your body relax more deeply as you feel the shelter of that ancient cave. Outside, the landscape is being transformed. Forest fires ignite spontaneously from lightning strikes, some growing into conflagrations that consume entire valleys. The people learn to read the lightning storms, noticing patterns in how auroras predict electrical activity hours later. They begin to understand that certain cloud formations, certain atmospheric conditions, precede the most violent electrical displays. They develop an early warning system based purely on observation, giving them time to seek deeper shelter and protect their vulnerable members. The storms become part of their new reality, something to adapt to rather than something to conquer. They modify their caves, creating deeper alcoves for the most violent weather. They develop protocols, ways of organizing the clan during storm events that ensure everyone knows their role and location. Children are taught storm procedures from the time they can walk. The knowledge becomes cultural, passed down through demonstration and story, encoded into the survival wisdom of the entire population. Scientists studying this period find evidence of massively increased fire activity in the geological record. Charcoal layers from 42,000 years ago show burn patterns consistent with unprecedented lightning-caused fires. Tree ring data from ancient preserved wood shows growth disruptions consistent with repeated fire damage. The ice cores reveal atmospheric chemistry changes matching increased electrical activity. The evidence confirms what seemed almost unbelievable. The Earth's weakened magnetic field had turned the planet's atmosphere into a vastly more electrically active system. Today, as our own magnetic field weakens along the same trajectory, we're beginning to see similar patterns emerge. Meteorological data shows increased lightning frequency in regions that were historically stable. Unusual storm formations appear in areas where atmospheric models predict they shouldn't form. Electrical grids experience surges from electromagnetic effects that don't match standard weather patterns. Aircraft report increased St. Elmo's fire and electrical disturbances during flights. The ancient pattern is repeating, visible in the data to anyone looking for it. But here's what matters as you drift deeper into restful understanding. The Ice Age people didn't have electrical grids to protect, or aircraft to ground, or satellite networks to worry about. In some ways, their adaptation was simpler. But in other ways, it required something we've partially lost. They had to develop an intimate relationship with their environment, reading subtle signs that predicted danger hours before it arrived. They had to trust their observations over assumptions. They had to be willing to change behavior based on pattern recognition. Feel the rhythm of distant thunder in your imagination, the safety of shelter, the ancient knowledge that storms always pass. Your ancestors learned to predict them, to prepare for them, to find safety during them, and to emerge afterward ready to continue. That capability lives in you, dormant perhaps, but not gone. When weather patterns become less predictable, when electrical storms intensify, when the atmospheric chaos of a weakening magnetic field manifests in your own lifetime, those inherited instincts will activate. For now, simply rest in the knowledge that they learned to read Earth's warnings. They developed the observational skills and behavioral flexibility to survive atmospheric chaos. And you carry their solution encoded in your DNA, waiting patiently to express itself when circumstances require it. Let that certainty deepen your relaxation as we continue their journey together. Sink deeper into comfort now as we witness something profound and heartbreaking. Over several generations, measured not in years but in lifetimes, the great animals that define the Ice Age world began to disappear. This wasn't sudden extinction. This was a slow fade that happened at the pace of human memory, each generation noticing that the herds were smaller than their parents described, that the mighty creatures were becoming rare, then scarce, then gone. Imagine the mammoth herds as they had been for millions of years, hundreds of animals moving together across vast landscapes, their presence so fundamental to the ecosystem that forests and grasslands were shaped by their feeding patterns. The Ice Age hunters knew these animals intimately, had developed hunting techniques refined over countless generations, could read mammoth behavior like you read expressions on familiar human faces. They depended on these creatures not just for food but for bone tools, for hide clothing, for the very structure of their survival technology. But the mammoth herds were shrinking. Where once a hunter could see hundreds, now he saw groups of 20, then 10. Then occasionally, heartbreakingly, a solitary old bull wandering alone, the last of his herd, confused and vulnerable without the social structure that mammoths needed to thrive. The giant ground sloths, massive peaceful creatures that had browsed in the southern regions for millions of years, vanished from entire territories. The saber-toothed cats, apex predators that had reigned for epochs, grew desperate and dangerous as their primary prey disappeared. Feel the weight of this change through the eyes of an Ice Age grandmother watching her grandchildren hunt. She remembers when mammoth were abundant, when meat was a certainty if hunters were skilled. Now her grandchildren return empty-handed more often than not because they lack skill, but because the animals simply aren't there to find. She doesn't know why.
None of them do.
They can only watch their world transform. What they couldn't see was happening at a biological level. The weakened magnetic field wasn't just making life uncomfortable for surface-dwelling creatures. It was disrupting the navigation systems of animals that depended on magnetoreception. Whales and dolphins, which use Earth's magnetic field like a GPS system, were beaching themselves in unprecedented numbers. Birds that migrated thousands of miles with perfect accuracy were flying into mountains, their internal compasses scrambled by the fluctuating magnetic environment. Even insects, many of which navigate using magnetic sensitivity, were failing to complete their normal life cycles. Let your breathing slow as you absorb this information. The cosmic radiation increase was having another effect. Cancer rates in long-lived species were climbing. Mammoths, which could live 70 years or more, were developing tumors at rates that affected reproduction. Mutation rates were increasing, mostly harmful, reducing fertility and offspring viability. The largest animals, which required the most resources and the longest gestation periods, were the most vulnerable to these stacked stresses. But watch what the humans do in response. They don't waste energy mourning what's lost. They adapt. Hunting strategies shift from large game to smaller, more abundant animals. Rabbits, birds, fish become primary food sources instead of supplementary ones. New preservation techniques are developed because smaller game requires different processing than mammoth meat. Cooperation between clans intensifies because successful hunting now requires pooling knowledge about where the remaining herds are, what routes they're taking, how their behavior has changed. This is beautiful to witness, this flexibility of human response. While the megafauna, magnificent and powerful as they were, couldn't adapt quickly enough to the changing conditions, humans transformed their entire survival strategy within a few generations. The Ice Age people didn't have genetic changes that allowed them to digest different foods or hunt different prey. They had something more powerful. They had culture. They had communication. They had the ability to share innovations and learn from each other's successes and failures. Scientists studying this period discovered something remarkable. While megafauna populations crashed globally, human populations remained stable or even grew slightly. This isn't what you'd expect if environmental conditions were deteriorating. It suggests that humans were actually benefiting from the crisis in some ways, developing new capabilities, expanding into territories the megafauna were abandoning, thriving through cognitive flexibility while larger, older species failed to adapt. Feel a sense of pride in that ancient achievement as you rest more deeply. Your direct ancestors, the humans whose genes you carry, were the ones who made it through. For every person alive today, there's an unbroken chain of survivors stretching back through this crisis and beyond. Every single one of your ancestors from this period successfully adapted, found food, reproduced, and raised offspring who survived to do the same. You are the product of the most successful survival lineage on the planet. The genetic evidence tells us something profound. The humans of 42,000 years ago were genetically identical to us. Same brain size, same cognitive capacity, same emotional range, same potential for innovation. They weren't primitive. They were us, facing extraordinary circumstances with the same intelligence you possess. If they could survive the collapse of their entire ecological system without modern technology or scientific understanding, what does that say about your capacity to survive the returning crisis with all the advantages they lacked? Let that question settle into your consciousness as you drift toward deeper rest. While giants fell, humans evolved new strategies. While species that had thrived for millions of years vanished within thousands, humans transformed their entire way of life and emerged stronger. This isn't ancient history separate from you. This is your origin story. The crucible that forged the survival capabilities you inherited. As the megafauna faded into extinction, human innovation exploded. As the old world died, humans were already building the new one. And you carry the genetic signature of those innovations, those adaptations, those hard-won victories over circumstances that seemed insurmountable. Rest in that knowledge. When your time comes to adapt, to innovate, to survive through change, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from 40,000 years of proven success. Your consciousness is drifting deeper now, following the path of ancient wisdom. Let yourself relax completely as we explore one of humanity's most remarkable innovations, born directly from the crisis they were living through. Sometimes survival requires more than just adapting to immediate threats. Sometimes it requires thinking across generations, creating systems that preserve knowledge through time itself. Deep in the caves where they sheltered from cosmic radiation, where the rock overhead provided precious protection from the harsh sun, something extraordinary began to happen. Using charcoal from their fires and ochre ground from iron-rich rocks, they began painting on the walls. Not random decoration, not casual doodling to pass time, but something far more purposeful. They were creating permanent records, external memory systems, information technology made from stone and pigment. Imagine an Ice Age grandmother teaching her granddaughter to paint. Feel yourself in that quiet moment, fire flickering behind them, casting moving shadows on the cave wall. The grandmother's weathered hand guides the young girl's fingers, showing her how to grind the ochre into powder, how to mix it with animal fat to create paint that will last, how to use a hollow reed to blow pigment around a hand, creating a perfect stencil, a mark that says, "I was here, I survived, remember me. But they're not just creating art for beauty's sake. Recent research suggests these cave paintings are maps, tracking charts, survival guides encoded in visual language. The spirals and dots and geometric patterns that archaeologists once dismissed as decoration are now understood to potentially represent star charts, seasonal calendars, and safe zone maps. The animal paintings show not just what they hunted, but where, when, and how. Painting locations seem to correlate with protected areas, teaching future generations which caves offered the best shelter from environmental dangers. Let your mind drift with theirs as they work. This is cognitive technology at its birth. Before written language, before formal schools, before books or computers or the internet, humans were solving the fundamental problem of information transmission across time. How do we tell our children's children what we learned? How do we preserve survival knowledge when oral tradition is fragile, when one epidemic or disaster could wipe out a generation of knowledge keepers? The answer was simple and profound. Paint it on stone, make it permanent. Let the caves themselves become libraries. The paintings show animals in specific postures and positions that encode information about their behavior. A mammoth painted with head lowered might indicate the season when they're grazing rather than migrating. A series of dots above certain animals could represent star positions visible during optimal hunting times. Handprints stenciled at different heights might mark water levels during different seasons. Every mark means something, communicates something, preserves something essential. Feel the satisfaction of creating something that will outlast you. The grandmother knows she won't live to see her great-great-grandchildren, but they'll see her work. They'll press their hands against the stone where she pressed hers and feel connected across impossible spans of time. They'll learn from her observations without ever hearing her voice. This is immortality through knowledge transfer, the most human of all achievements. Archaeologists have made a stunning discovery. There's a sudden explosion in cave art precisely, dating to the geomagnetic excursion period 42,000 years ago. Before this period, cave art exists but is relatively rare. During the crisis, it explodes in frequency, complexity, and geographic distribution. Caves across Europe, Asia, and eventually other continents show this same spike in artistic activity. The correlation is too precise to be coincidence. The crisis triggered the innovation. Your breathing is slow and steady as you absorb this pattern. Humans under pressure innovate. Humans facing existential threat create new technologies. The same crisis that killed the megafauna and disrupted global climate became the catalyst for one of humanity's most important inventions: permanent information storage. What seemed like artistic expression was actually survival science, knowledge preservation in its earliest form. Today we're doing exactly the same thing in response to the returning crisis, though our caves are digital and our paint is data. As magnetic field weakening increases risks to satellite networks and electrical grids, we're frantically backing up information. Multiple redundant systems, hardened storage facilities, distributed networks that can survive regional failures. We're building the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. We're creating the Arctic World Archive to preserve human knowledge in case of civilizational collapse. We're encoding information in DNA and crystal matrices that can survive for thousands of years. We think we're being innovative, but we're actually repeating an ancient pattern. 42,000 years ago, our ancestors faced the same existential uncertainty and responded by preserving knowledge against an unknown future. We're not inventing this response. We're inheriting it, expressing genetic and cultural programming that tells us, when crisis comes, preserve what matters, encode survival information, communicate across time to people you'll never meet. Let yourself drift deeper as you feel that connection. Picture yourself adding your own mark to their eternal record. your knowledge, your observations, your adaptations to the modern version of their ancient crisis become part of the continuous human story. The grandmother painting in the cave is connected to you, painting in pixels and data, separated by 40,000 years, but united in purpose. Preserve, teach, survive, continue. The cave walls became humanity's first hard drives, information storage that didn't depend on fragile human memory. When elders died unexpectedly, when disasters struck, when knowledge was at risk of being lost, the paintings remained steady, permanent, patient, teaching generation after generation the wisdom won through observation and experimentation and survival itself. Feel the peace in that continuity as your consciousness settles into deeper rest. They thought of you, not specifically, not individually, but they thought of the future humans who would need what they learned. They painted for you. They preserved for you. They created permanent records so that knowledge wouldn't die when they did. And you're here now because that information transfer worked, because knowledge survived, because humans 42,000 years ago cared enough about the future to encode their wisdom in stone. This is the pattern repeating. As our magnetic field weakens, as environmental stresses mount, as the familiar systems show signs of instability, we're unconsciously activating the same ancient response. Archive, preserve, teach, document, not because someone told us to, but because the genetic and cultural memory of the last crisis is expressing itself through us. We are them, continued forward, repeating their successful strategies without necessarily understanding why the impulse feels so urgent. Rest in that ancient wisdom now. The crisis forced human consciousness to evolve new capabilities for information preservation. We learned to think beyond our own lifetimes, to care about humans we'd never meet, to create systems that would teach and protect people born centuries after we died. That expansion of temporal awareness, that ability to care about the deep future, emerged directly from crisis and became one of humanity's defining characteristics. You carry that capability now. The ability to think generationally, to preserve knowledge for the future, to create systems that outlast individual lives. It's not separate from you. It's core to what makes you human, activated and optimized during the exact crisis that's beginning to return. When the time comes to preserve what matters, when the instinct to document and teach and archive rises in you, know that you're expressing 40,000-year-old wisdom, painting on modern cave walls, continuing the story they began. Let yourself sink even deeper into relaxation as we explore how the Ice Age people maintained psychological resilience during a crisis that stretched across centuries. Your breath finds its own perfect rhythm, slow and steady. As we discover ancient wisdom about the relationship between ritual community and survival, as the disaster stretched from seasons into years and then into decades, the people developed something crucial beyond practical survival skills. They developed rituals not as superstition but as psychological technology, group bonding activities that reduced stress and coordinated community action in ways that raw information sharing couldn't achieve alone. Every full moon, clans gathered to share information about weather patterns, animal movements, safe zones. But they didn't just talk. They danced, they sang. They told stories that encoded survival knowledge into memorable narrative form. Picture yourself at one of these gatherings. The full moon rises huge and bright over the Ice Age landscape. Families travel from their scattered shelters to a central gathering place, a rock formation or large cave system known to all the connected clans. The journey itself bonds people, creates anticipation, marks time in a world where calendars don't exist. When they arrive, there's an eruption of greeting, of embracing, of checking on each other's well-being. This isn't casual social interaction. This is the maintenance of survival networks through emotional connection. The ritual begins as darkness deepens. A circle forms, elders and children, hunters and gatherers, the strong and the vulnerable all included. Fire at the center provides light and warmth, but more importantly, it provides focus, a shared point of attention that unifies individual consciousness into group awareness. The drumming starts simple rhythms that match resting heart rates, that synchronize the nervous systems of everyone present. Your own heartbeat would slow to match the drum's pulse. Your breathing would coordinate with those around you. This is neurological entrainment happening naturally, reducing individual stress through group coherence. They dance in patterns that tell stories. A hunter mimics the movement of prey, teaching observation skills through motion rather than words. Children copy the adults, learning through repetition what can't be explained in language they haven't fully developed yet. The movement itself serves multiple purposes. It maintains physical fitness crucial for survival. It provides a release for stress hormones that build up during dangerous daily life. It creates joy, that essential emotional state that makes endurance possible. Feel the comfort of being held in community this way.
Not judged.
Not evaluated. Simply present and accepted as part of the whole. Modern psychology has confirmed what Ice Age humans intuitively understood, that group ritual reduces cortisol, the stress hormone that damages health when chronically elevated. It increases oxytocin, the bonding hormone that enhances immune function and emotional resilience. It creates what researchers call collective
Effervescence, that sense of being part of.
Something larger than yourself that provides meaning and purpose even during hardship. One particular ritual, developed specifically in response to the crisis, a sleeping arrangement that combined practical warmth with deep psychological security. Whole families would sleep in protective circles, bodies radiating from a central fire like spokes on a wheel. Each person's feet pointed toward the warmth, heads toward the outer darkness. But not alone in that darkness, because they were surrounded by family, by clan, by community. This formation served obvious practical purposes. The fire provided warmth more efficiently when bodies were arranged radially. The outer ring of sleeping adults provided early warning against predators or dangers approaching from the darkness. But it served deeper purposes too. Children who grew up sleeping in these protective formations developed more resilient stress responses. They learned at a cellular level that they were held safe, that danger might exist but protection existed too, that they weren't facing threats alone. Let that image settle into your consciousness as you rest. The protective circle, the central warmth, the community holding space for individual rest. This is ancient security, a pattern that speaks directly to the mammalian brain stem, to the deep survival centers that regulate fear and safety. Your ancestors slept this way for hundreds of generations. The genetic memory of that security lives in you, accessible when needed, a resource you didn't know you possessed. The rituals themselves became survival technology, as important as any tool or technique. Clans that maintained strong ritual practices showed better outcomes than those that didn't. Not because the rituals magically prevented danger, but because they maintained social cohesion, reduced stress-related illness, and created psychological resilience that allowed for better decision-making and more effective cooperation when challenges arose. The ritual wasn't separate from survival. The ritual was survival, the maintenance of the psychological and social infrastructure that made all other survival strategies possible. Today, as we face the returning magnetic crisis, we're unconsciously recreating these patterns. Online communities forming around shared interests and values. Regular gatherings of like-minded people seeking connection and meaning. The explosive growth of group practices like yoga, meditation circles, drum circles, singing groups. We think we're inventing these things or that they're just leisure activities. But we're actually responding to ancient instincts that recognize approaching crisis and activate social bonding behaviors. Feel yourself as part of that eternal protective circle now. 42,000 years of humans sleeping in safety, held by community, maintained by ritual, protected by the collective strength that individuals alone couldn't achieve. Your ancestors created these patterns to survive what's returning. The patterns still work. The rituals still function. The ancient protection is still available, waiting for us to remember how to activate it. For now, simply rest in knowing it exists, encoded in culture and genetics, ready when needed. Your consciousness drifts deeper now into a mystery that reveals profound truths about adaptation and survival. Let yourself become completely relaxed as we explore what happened to humanity's closest cousins during the same crisis our ancestors endured. This is a story of two paths, two responses to the same existential challenge, and why one succeeded while the other faded into extinction. Neanderthals had survived for 300,000 years before this crisis began. 300,000 years. Let that sink in as you breathe slowly. They had thrived through multiple ice ages, adapted to the harshest European and Asian climates, developed sophisticated tools and hunting strategies. They had larger brains than modern humans, significantly larger. They had more powerful bodies, stronger muscles, greater physical endurance. By every measure of physical capability, they should have been better equipped to survive environmental stress than the modern humans they coexisted with. But during the geomagnetic excursion that began 42,000 years ago, something changed. Neanderthal populations, which had remained stable for hundreds of millennia, began shrinking, not rapidly, not dramatically at first, but steadily, inexorably, they faded from Europe and Asia. By 30,000 years ago, they were gone. The last of their kind had died, ending an evolutionary lineage that stretched back hundreds of thousands of years. Feel the weight of that disappearance as you rest in comfortable darkness. The same cosmic radiation that bombarded modern humans bombarded Neanderthals. The same weakened magnetic field that increased cancer rates in our ancestors increased them in Neanderthals. The same climate chaos that disrupted megafauna herds disrupted the prey that Neanderthals depended on. They faced identical environmental stresses, but the outcomes were opposite.
Modern humans survived and thrived.
Neanderthals vanished completely. Why? This question has obsessed researchers for decades. The evidence now suggests something both subtle and profound. Neanderthals, with their larger brains and powerful bodies, had smaller social networks than modern humans. Their archaeological sites show evidence of family groups, small clans, but not the larger interclan networks that modern humans maintained. They had excellent hunting skills, refined over hundreds of thousands of years of practice, but less evidence of the rapid behavioral innovation that characterizes modern human sites from this period. Watch this pattern carefully as your breathing slows even further. Neanderthals were adapted perfectly for stable conditions. Their hunting strategies worked brilliantly when prey behavior was predictable. Their social structures functioned well when resources were reliable. Their physical strength served them excellently when familiar methods sufficed. But they showed less behavioral flexibility than modern humans, less capacity for rapid cultural change, less ability to abandon working strategies when conditions shifted enough to make those strategies obsolete. When the cosmic radiation intensified, when weather became radically unpredictable, when the megafauna their hunting strategies depended on began vanishing, Neanderthals tried to persist with refined versions of what had always worked. Modern humans, faced with the same challenges, threw out entire survival strategies and invented new ones within single generations. Neanderthals had deeper specialization. Modern humans had greater flexibility. And when the environment changed faster than evolution could respond, flexibility won. This isn't about intelligence in any simple sense. Neanderthals were brilliant, sophisticated, successful for hundreds of thousands of years. This is about the type of intelligence that survives rapid environmental change. Not the intelligence that perfects existing solutions, but the intelligence that abandons them completely when necessary. Not the intelligence that operates independently, but the intelligence that leverages large social networks to share innovations rapidly. Not the intelligence that relies on physical capability, but the intelligence that relies on behavioral adaptability. Let this understanding settle into your resting consciousness. The crisis that eliminated humanity's closest cousins made our ancestors stronger. It was a test neither species designed or chose, a cosmic challenge that evaluated not strength or brain size, but something more fundamental. Adaptability, cooperation, cultural flexibility, willingness to change. And the humans who passed that test, whose genes you carry right now, weren't the strongest or the smartest in some abstract sense. They were the most flexible. Modern genetics reveals something fascinating. Most people of European and Asian ancestry carry small amounts of Neanderthal DNA, evidence that the two species interbred before Neanderthals disappeared. The Neanderthal genes that survived in human populations are interesting. They include immune system genes that provided advantages against certain pathogens. They include genes affecting skin and hair, adapted to northern climates. They include genes affecting the circadian rhythm and response to high-altitude environments. The useful genes were kept. The rest was selected out, but the converse isn't true. Neanderthals who interbred with humans didn't gain enough advantage from human genes to survive as a species. This suggests that what made humans successful wasn't primarily genetic. It was cultural, behavioral, social, things that can't be inherited through DNA transfer, but must be learned, practiced, maintained through community knowledge transmission. The very things we've been exploring throughout this journey, through Ice Age survival. Your breathing is deep and steady now as you absorb the profound lesson encoded in this extinction event. The crisis beginning again today isn't testing physical strength or raw intelligence. It's testing the same qualities it tested 42,000 years ago: adaptability, cooperation, behavioral flexibility, willingness to abandon familiar patterns when they stop working, ability to share innovations across large social networks, capacity for rapid cultural change. By those measures, modern humans have extraordinary advantages Neanderthals lacked. We have global communication networks allowing instant information sharing. We have cultural practices encouraging innovation and experimentation. We have social systems that, despite their flaws, connect billions of people in knowledge-sharing networks. We have educational systems dedicated to teaching flexibility and creativity. Everything the crisis will test, we've been optimizing for generations without fully knowing why. This is your inheritance speaking directly to you now as you drift toward deeper rest. You are not descended from the lineage that failed the test. You carry the genes and cultural patterns of the survivors, the adapters, the innovators, who proved they could change faster than the environment changed. That capability isn't theoretical or historical. It's active in you right now, coded into your DNA and your cultural inheritance, waiting for circumstances that require its expression. The Neanderthals were magnificent. Their 300,000-year survival record proves that. But when the ultimate test came, when cosmic forces beyond anyone's control created conditions requiring maximum flexibility, they couldn't adapt quickly enough. Your ancestors could and did. The proof is you, breathing steadily right now, carrying the victory of flexibility over specialization, of adaptation over rigidity, of cooperative innovation over independent perfection. Rest in that knowledge as we continue deeper into ancient wisdom. The crisis was a test. Humanity passed. Neanderthals didn't. And the specific qualities that made the difference are the same qualities you'll need as the crisis returns. Not stronger bodies or larger brains, but flexible minds, connected communities, and willingness to change everything when change becomes necessary. You inherit those exact capabilities from the survivors. When your time comes, they'll activate, just as they did 42,000 years ago. Let your consciousness drift even deeper now as we explore how the weakened magnetic field triggered cascading climate chaos that transformed the entire planet. Your body is completely relaxed. Your breathing is slow and natural. Your mind is open to receiving ancient wisdom about how humans survived when the climate itself became unpredictable in ways that defied all previous patterns. The weakened magnetic field wasn't just allowing cosmic radiation to reach the surface. It was fundamentally altering how Earth's atmosphere interacted with solar wind and cosmic particles. The increased ionization was changing cloud formation patterns. The altered atmospheric chemistry was affecting precipitation cycles. The cosmic ray flux was influencing the jet stream in ways that created unprecedented weather variability. Climate chaos cascaded through interconnected systems, each change triggering additional changes in a pattern too complex for anyone to predict. Ice sheets that had been stable for thousands of years began advancing and retreating within single lifetimes. Imagine being that Ice Age grandmother we've followed through this story, remembering the coastline from her childhood 50 winters ago and seeing it now either dozens of meters lower or higher. Entire valleys flooded that were once hunting grounds, or bays that held fish now transformed into dry land. The climate wasn't just changing, it was oscillating, swinging between extremes so rapidly that adaptation strategies barely had time to develop before conditions shifted again. Feel yourself in their uncertainty as you breathe slowly. Monsoons that had arrived with seasonal precision for longer than oral tradition could remember simply failed for decades. Rain that usually fell in predictable patterns came instead in devastating floods that washed away settlements and hunting grounds. Droughts persisted in areas that had been wetlands. Forests became grasslands in the span of a few generations. Then deserts, then forests again as climate
Oscillated through states that seemed almost
random. Sea levels fluctuated by dozens of meters as ice sheets
melted during warm periods and
reformed during cold snaps that came without warning. Coastlines where clans had lived for generations vanished underwater during their lifetimes, forcing entire populations to migrate inland. River systems changed course as precipitation patterns shifted. Lakes that provided reliable resources dried up completely, leaving behind only salt flats and the bones of creatures that depended on them. The Ice Age people couldn't understand the mechanisms driving these changes. They didn't know about magnetic fields or cosmic rays or atmospheric chemistry, but they could observe the effects, and they developed a crucial survival strategy in response. They stopped expecting stability. They stopped planning based on the assumption that next year would resemble last year. They developed a fundamentally different relationship with their environment, one based on constant observation, rapid response, and complete willingness to abandon plans when conditions shifted. Let this wisdom sink deeper into your resting consciousness. They created seasonal calendars using astronomy, tracking star positions and moon phases to predict general patterns even when weather became unpredictable. They developed food preservation technologies that could maintain resources through extended droughts or failed hunting seasons. They built transportable shelters that could be moved within days when conditions required relocation. Every aspect of their material culture evolved toward flexibility and rapid adaptability. Picture a clan facing a dried riverbed where salmon once spawned in numbers sufficient to feed them through winter. The easy response would be to wait, to hope next season brings the fish back, to cling to familiarity. But that's not what survivors do. The survivors observe, adapt, innovate. They follow the water to its new source. They develop new food-gathering strategies. They trade knowledge with other clans about where fish can still be found. They teach their children the new patterns while preserving memory of the old patterns in case conditions shift again. This cognitive flexibility, this capacity to change plans without attachment to sunk costs or familiar methods, became humanity's superpower during the climate chaos of the geomagnetic excursion. It's visible in the archaeological record. During this period, human sites show evidence of rapid behavioral change. Tool technologies that dominated one region for thousands of years suddenly shift within a few generations. Settlement patterns transform. Dietary evidence shows dramatic changes in food sources. This is visible adaptation happening at historical speed. Your breathing continues its slow rhythm as understanding deepens. Today's climate shifts are following eerily similar patterns to those from 42,000 years ago. Increased weather unpredictability, oscillating between extremes rather than gradual linear change. Failing monsoons,
unexpected droughts and floods.
Sea level changes affecting coastal populations. Arctic ice sheets showing unprecedented variability. The patterns aren't just similar. They're matching the historical record from the last geomagnetic excursion with uncomfortable precision. But here's what matters as you sink deeper into restful awareness. If Ice Age humans survived climate chaos with only stone tools and oral tradition, with no global communication or scientific understanding or stored knowledge beyond what they could remember and paint on cave walls, what does that say about our capacity to survive with every advantage they lacked? We have satellite monitoring showing weather pattern changes in real time. We have global networks allowing instant information sharing about successful adaptations. We have stored food, preserved knowledge, interconnected systems for coordinating response. The challenge is identical. The tools are incomparably better. The outcome should favor us even more strongly than it favored them, but only if we activate the same psychological flexibility they developed. Only if we're willing to observe honestly, adapt quickly, and abandon familiar patterns when they stop serving survival. Only if we can overcome the modern tendency toward rigid planning and embrace the ancient wisdom of constant flexibility. Let yourself rest in the understanding that your ancestors survived planetary climate chaos. They tracked changes they couldn't predict. They adapted to conditions that oscillated faster than evolutionary change could respond. They maintained psychological stability while the literal ground beneath their feet transformed. And they succeeded so completely that their descendants, you, inherited a world where climate stability was taken for granted for most of human history following that crisis. The climate cascade they endured is beginning again, driven by the same weakening magnetic field following the same pattern. But you carry their adaptation genes. You hold their flexibility instincts. You possess their proven capacity to survive when the climate itself becomes unpredictable. For now, simply rest in that genetic confidence, knowing that when your time comes to adapt to rapid climate change, you're not starting from ignorance. You're continuing a 40,000-year-old success story written in your DNA by ancestors who already proved humans can survive this. Your body continues to release tension as we explore one of the most remarkable aspects of the Ice Age crisis. Let yourself drift deeper into comfort as we discover how extreme pressure creates breakthrough innovation, how necessity truly becomes the mother of invention, and how the same crisis that destroyed so much also created technologies that changed human survival forever. Crisis breeds innovation in ways that stability never can. During the geomagnetic excursion, when everything familiar became unreliable and every assumption about how the world worked was challenged, the archaeological record shows an extraordinary explosion of new technologies appearing within just a few thousand years. This wasn't gradual evolution. This was revolutionary change. Humans inventing solutions to problems they'd never faced before, creating tools and techniques that would persist long after the crisis ended. Fish hooks appear in the archaeological record precisely during this period. Before the crisis, evidence of fishing exists, but it's crude and occasional. During the crisis, sophisticated bonefish hooks show up across multiple continents, refined designs that reveal deep understanding of fish behavior and efficient capture methods. Why? Because as megafauna vanished and large game became scarce, alternative food sources became essential. Rivers and lakes provided protein that didn't depend on unpredictable animal migrations. The need drove the innovation. Feel yourself in the mind of that first innovator as your consciousness drifts deeper. Someone watching fish, frustrated by failed attempts to catch them consistently, suddenly seeing the solution. A curved bone shaped just right. A point sharp enough to pierce but angled to prevent escape. That moment of insight, that flash of understanding, changed human survival odds across entire populations. Within a generation, Every clan within trading distance was using fishhooks. One person's innovation became everyone's advantage. Sewing needles with eyes for thread appeared during this period, another revolutionary technology. Before this, animal hide clothing was crude, pieced together with basic techniques. But as climate oscillated wildly, as temperatures swung between extremes, as protection from elements became literally life or death, someone invented the eyed needle. Suddenly, tailored clothing became possible. Garments that fit the body precisely, that conserved heat efficiently, that could be adjusted and repaired and improved. This single innovation dramatically increased survival odds during the harsh temperature swings the climate chaos created. Let your breathing slow as you absorb the pattern emerging here. Each innovation represents someone observing a problem deeply, imagining a solution that doesn't yet exist, experimenting until the solution works, then teaching others. This is rapid cultural evolution, not genetic changes that take thousands of generations, but behavioral adaptations passing through communities at revolutionary speed. Information transfer through teaching and imitation, allowing beneficial innovations to spread across entire populations within decades rather than millennia. The atlatl appears during this period, a spear-throwing device that uses leverage to double or triple the range and power of thrown spears. Watch this innovation through the eyes of its inventor. A young hunter noticing how birds use their beaks as extensions of their heads to reach what they couldn't otherwise grasp. That observation translated into a simple carved stick with a hook on one end that extends the throwing arm's effective length. Suddenly, dangerous animals can be hunted from safer distances. Prey that could escape spear range can be reached. Hunting success rates increase dramatically. Within a single generation, archaeological evidence shows atlatls spreading across vast territories. Every hunter in connected regions is using them. This is information technology in action. Human knowledge networks distributing survival advantages at speeds that give populations using them significant advantages over populations that don't. The innovation becomes competitive advantage. Groups that share knowledge freely thrive. Groups that hoard it or resist new methods fall behind. Musical instruments appear in greater frequency and sophistication during this period. Bone flutes with precisely spaced holes for creating specific notes. Percussion instruments, evidence of complex rhythmic traditions. This isn't frivolous entertainment during crisis. This is community bonding technology. Music synchronizes nervous systems, reduces stress hormones, creates group cohesion that translates directly into better cooperation and survival outcomes. The clans making music together hunt better together, share resources more effectively, maintain psychological resilience that isolated individuals cannot sustain alone. Feel the satisfaction of these innovations as you rest more deeply. Each one represents human consciousness expanding to meet challenges, refusing to accept limitations, finding solutions where none existed before. This is the inheritance you carry. When faced with seemingly impossible problems, the human mind doesn't shut down.
It activates. It searches.
It experiments. It creates. Scientists studying this period find evidence of something remarkable. The rate of innovation during the geomagnetic excursion is dramatically higher than the millennia immediately before or after. It's as if the crisis opened cognitive pathways that stability had left dormant. Necessity didn't just breed invention. Necessity revealed inventive capacities that had always existed but hadn't been required. The humans weren't becoming smarter. They were becoming more creative under pressure, more willing to experiment, more open to radical new approaches. Today, as our own magnetic field weakens along the same trajectory, we're witnessing an identical innovation explosion. As satellite failures and navigation issues emerge from electromagnetic effects, new technologies appear. Backup positioning systems that don't depend on magnetic field readings, hardened electronics resistant to electromagnetic pulses, alternative communication methods for when conventional systems fail. distributed network architectures that can maintain function despite regional failures. The same innovative spirit responding to the same planetary crisis, separated by 42,000 years but identical in pattern. Let this understanding settle into your relaxed consciousness. Your ancestors weren't passive victims of cosmic forces beyond their control. They were active innovators, problem solvers, creators of solutions that didn't exist until they were needed.
That capacity lives in you.
When crisis comes, when familiar methods fail, when innovation becomes survival necessity, you carry the genetic and cultural programming of the most successful innovators in human history. The crisis was an innovation trigger. Each challenge sparked creative responses. Each failed method drove experimentation with new approaches. Each successful innovation spread rapidly through knowledge-sharing networks. This is humanity's pattern during existential threat.
Not despair.
Not paralysis.
Innovation explosion. Rapid adaptation.
Collective problem-solving at unprecedented speed. And you inherit not just the innovations themselves, but the innovative mindset that created them. Rest in that capability as we continue deeper into ancient wisdom about surviving the returning crisis. Sink deeper into peaceful rest now as we explore something beautiful and profound about how the next generation responded to crisis. Your breathing finds its own perfect rhythm as we discover why children born during disaster often adapt better than the adults who remember easier times, and what this teaches us about resilience, acceptance, and the flexibility of consciousness itself. Children born during the height of the geomagnetic excursion crisis knew nothing else. To them, the intense auroras pulsing red and purple across the night sky weren't unusual. They were simply the sky. The harsh sun that blistered unprotected skin wasn't a change from something better. It was just the sun. The unpredictable weather, the scarce megafauna, the constant need for adaptation, none of this represented loss because they had no memory of abundance to grieve. This psychological adaptation, accepting the present rather than mourning the past, gave them resilience their parents struggled to match. Picture a young child, perhaps 5 winters old, playing near the cave entrance. She's invented games with colored stones, sorting them into patterns that amuse her. She's laughing, genuinely happy, despite conditions that would seem harsh to anyone from a more stable time. Her grandmother watches with tears in her eyes. Tears of loss for the easier world she remembers, yes, but also tears of hope because this child is happy despite everything. The grandmother understands something profound. Resilience isn't about circumstances. It's about adaptation to whatever circumstances exist. Let yourself feel this truth as you drift deeper into rest. Happiness doesn't require perfect conditions. Joy isn't dependent on external stability. Children prove this constantly, finding delight in whatever world they're given, making games from scarcity, laughing in the face of hardship, not because they're ignorant, but because they're adapted. This is a form of wisdom adults often lose, but desperately need to reclaim. The children born during the crisis developed enhanced observation skills that their pre-crisis grandparents never needed. Growing up in a dangerous, unpredictable world where yesterday's safe zones might be today's hazards, they learned to notice subtle environmental changes that adults missed. They became the early warning system for their clans, spotting shifting weather patterns, unusual animal behavior, approaching threats before the supposedly more experienced hunters registered danger. Watch a 10-year-old boy noticing that birds are flying lower than usual, their calls more urgent.
He alerts the adults.
Within hours, a violent storm arrives that would have caught the hunting party in the open if they hadn't heeded his warning and returned early.
This isn't luck.
This is heightened awareness born from growing up when every day requires attention to survive. The child's nervous system developed in an environment where observation mattered, where noticing details made the difference between safety and danger, and his perceptual systems calibrated accordingly. Feel your own childhood resilience remembered as your body relaxes more completely. You had it once, that capacity to adapt to whatever world you were given, to find joy regardless of conditions. That capability didn't disappear. It's dormant, perhaps, waiting for circumstances that require its activation. The children of the Ice Age crisis prove that humans can be happy, can thrive psychologically, can develop enhanced capabilities even during extended disaster. The key is acceptance rather than resistance, adaptation rather than nostalgia, present focus rather than past attachment. Modern psychology studying children growing up during extended crises, wars, displacements, environmental disasters, finds patterns identical to what we infer from Ice Age evidence. Yes, trauma exists. Yes, stress affects development. But children also show remarkable resilience, often recovering faster than adults, adapting more completely to new realities, developing capabilities that peaceful childhoods don't require. The brain is plastic, especially young brains, reshaping itself to match the environment it finds itself in. Today's children, growing up amid climate change, pandemic disruptions, technological transformation, economic uncertainty, show similar adaptations. Yes, anxiety exists. Yes, they face challenges. But they also demonstrate enhanced awareness, comfort with rapid change, innovative thinking that treats disruption as normal rather than exceptional. They're not damaged by crisis in the way older generations fear. They're being forged by it, shaped by it, adapted to it in ways that may prove advantageous as conditions continue shifting. Let this understanding bring comfort as you breathe slowly and deeply. The next generation isn't doomed by the returning crisis. They're being prepared for it in ways that protected childhoods could never achieve. Their nervous systems are calibrating to variability. Their problem-solving skills are developing in environments that require constant adaptation. Their psychological flexibility is being trained by conditions that demand it. They're becoming what the environment requires, just as Ice Age children did 42,000 years ago. The grandmother watching her grandchild play understood this intuitively. The child's happiness in harsh conditions wasn't naivety, it was adaptation. The child's enhanced awareness wasn't hypervigilance, it was appropriate calibration to actual environmental demands. The child represented not the tragedy of innocence lost, but the hope of resilience gained. She would survive precisely because she never knew easy times, because her entire development occurred in conditions that selected for the exact capabilities survival required. Rest deeply in this wisdom now. Generational adaptation works. Children born during crisis carry advantages adults who remember stability don't possess. This isn't fair perhaps, but it's effective.
Evolution doesn't care about fairness.
It cares about survival. And children adapted to harsh conditions survive harsh conditions better than those adapted to easy ones. The Ice Age children proved this. Today's children are proving it again. And understanding this pattern allows us to support rather than pity them, to recognize their developing strengths rather than focusing only on what they lack compared to more protected generations. Your own inner child, that part of you that remembers how to adapt and find joy regardless of circumstances, rests peacefully now, knowing that resilience is never lost, only dormant, waiting for the moment it becomes necessary again. The children adapted better than their parents. Young people today carry the same adaptive advantage, and you carry the child's capacity for acceptance and joy somewhere within your consciousness, ready to activate when needed. Your consciousness continues drifting deeper into restful understanding as we explore how Ice Age humans discovered that connection itself becomes infrastructure for survival. Let yourself relax completely as we uncover why isolated strength matters less than networked resilience, and how the same principle that saved them 42,000 years ago is being unconsciously recreated today through digital connection. Individual clans, no matter how skilled or well-prepared, couldn't survive the crisis alone. The archaeological record tells this story clearly. During the geomagnetic excursion period, evidence of long-distance trade increases dramatically. Tool technologies appear simultaneously across vast distances, suggesting knowledge transfer across regions that would take weeks or months to travel between. Shell beads from coastal areas show up in inland sites hundreds of kilometers away. Obsidian from specific volcanic sources is found in settlements far from those sources. This isn't random. This is deliberate network building, humans recognizing that survival requires connection. Picture representatives from different clans meeting at a neutral site, perhaps a distinctive rock formation or major river confluence, places that can be described and found without maps or written directions. They've traveled for days to reach this gathering, leaving their immediate families in trusted hands, carrying whatever trade goods their clan can spare. The journey itself is dangerous, but isolation is more dangerous. The information and resources that can be gained through connection outweigh the risks of travel. Feel yourself there as these ancient humans conduct what we'd recognize as a information and resource exchange network. One clan shares knowledge about weather patterns they've observed, unusual storm formations that preceded harsh conditions, warning signs that proved accurate. Another shares information about animal movements, which herds are migrating through which valleys, which hunting grounds have failed, and which remain productive. A third demonstrates a new tool technology, teaching the technique freely because they understand that strengthening allied clans strengthens everyone. They trade materials, yes, but more importantly, they trade knowledge. A food preservation technique that's working well in one region gets shared with others. A shelter design that's proving resistant to the violent storms gets copied and adapted. A medicinal plant discovery that's saving lives from radiation sickness gets distributed through the network. Each clan contributes what they've learned, and each clan receives the accumulated wisdom of dozens of other groups. The whole becomes vastly more resilient than any part could be alone. Let your breathing slow as you absorb this pattern. They're creating distributed knowledge storage, backup systems for survival information. If one clan suffers disaster, if knowledge is lost in one location, it persists in the network. If one region becomes uninhabitable, connected clans can migrate to allied territories where they'll be received rather than fought. If one group invents a crucial innovation, it spreads rapidly through the network rather than being confined to a single population that might not survive to pass it forward. Watch marriage arrangements being negotiated at these gatherings. Young people from different clans pairing up, creating family bonds that tie groups together across geographic distance. This isn't just romance, though romance certainly exists. This is genetic diversity insurance, ensuring that populations don't become too isolated and inbred. This is alliance building, creating family connections that mandate mutual aid during crisis. This is human networking at its most fundamental, recognizing that diversity and connection provide advantages that isolated purity never can. The network becomes survival infrastructure, as essential as any tool or shelter. When drought strikes one region, connected clans can share information about water sources in other areas or offer temporary relocation to their territories. When a clan loses hunters to accident or predation, connected clans can send reinforcements or adjust trade relationships to help the affected group survive until they recover. When innovation occurs anywhere in the network, it becomes available everywhere within seasons or years, rather than being lost when the inventor dies. Feel the comfort of being held in such a network as you rest more deeply, not facing challenges alone. Not dependent solely on your immediate group's knowledge and resources, connected to a larger system where information flows, where mutual aid operates, where collective resilience exceeds individual capability. This is ancient security, the recognition that humans are fundamentally social creatures whose survival odds multiply through connection rather than isolation. Today, our internet and global communication networks are recreating this exact pattern at planetary scale. What took Ice Age humans days or weeks of travel to achieve, we accomplish in milliseconds. Information about successful adaptations to climate change spreads globally within hours. Innovations in renewable energy or food security or disaster response get shared across continents instantly. Online communities form around shared challenges, pooling knowledge and resources in ways that mirror ancient clan networks but operate at speeds that would seem magical to our ancestors. We dismiss social media as trivial sometimes, but look at its structure. It's creating exactly the distributed knowledge networks that Ice Age humans built through dangerous travel and face-to-face gatherings, forums where people share survival knowledge, videos teaching practical skills, global coordination of response to emerging threats, communities forming around shared values and mutual aid. This isn't new human behavior. This is ancient human behavior enabled by modern tools, the same instincts that saved our ancestors now operating through fiber optics and satellites instead of trade routes and gathering sites. Let this understanding bring peace as your consciousness drifts deeper. The returning crisis finds us already networked at levels Ice Age humans couldn't imagine. What they accomplished with dozens of clans and trade routes spanning hundreds of kilometers, we do with billions of people and networks spanning the globe. If they survive through connection despite all the limitations of Stone Age technology, what does our vastly superior connectivity make possible? The Ice Age networks worked because people contributed freely, understanding that strengthening others strengthened everyone. That principle still operates when we allow it. Open source software, Creative Commons knowledge sharing, online communities teaching skills freely, global coordination on shared threats. Every time we share knowledge without hoarding it, every time we strengthen others' capacity to survive and thrive, we're recreating the network effects that saved humanity 42,000 years ago. Rest now in the knowledge that you're part of the most extensively networked human population that has ever existed.
Isolation meant death then.
Connection meant survival. Today, we're more connected than any previous generation. The same crisis returning finds us with the same solution already built, operating at scales and speeds our ancestors would recognize in purpose, even if the mechanisms seem miraculous. The network that saved them is available to you, vastly amplified, ready to distribute the knowledge and resources that turn individual vulnerability into collective resilience. Let yourself drift into even deeper relaxation now as we explore something profound about how the crisis literally rewrote human DNA. Your breathing is slow and natural as we discover how cosmic radiation, dangerous as it was, also created genetic advantages that you carry in every cell of your body right now. This is your evolutionary origin story, the cosmic forge that shaped humanity into what we are today. The increased cosmic radiation penetrating Earth's weakened magnetic shield had effects at the most fundamental level of biology. DNA, that elegant double helix that encodes all the instructions for building and operating a human being, was being damaged at rates significantly higher than normal. Every living thing on the surface experienced this. The radiation would strike DNA molecules, breaking chemical bonds, creating mutations. Most of these mutations were harmful. Many were neutral, but some, a crucial, small percentage, were beneficial. Feel yourself at the cellular level for a moment as you rest in complete comfort. In every cell, systems exist to repair DNA damage. These repair mechanisms work constantly, fixing breaks and errors that occur naturally during cell division or from environmental factors. But during the geomagnetic excursion, these systems were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of radiation damage. The repair mechanisms that worked efficiently became the difference between survival and cancer, between healthy offspring and miscarriage, between thriving and dying young. Humans who happened to carry genetic variations that made their DNA repair systems more efficient, even just slightly more efficient, had dramatic survival advantages. They developed cancer at lower rates. Their children were born healthy more consistently. They remained fertile longer. They lived to older ages. And because they survived and reproduced at higher rates than those with less efficient repair systems, their genetic variations spread through the population over generations. This wasn't pleasant. Don't let the clinical description obscure the human suffering involved. Higher infant mortality as babies with severe mutations didn't survive. More cancer as radiation damage overwhelmed repair systems. More birth defects as cosmic rays struck developing fetuses. More early deaths as accumulated damage exceeded the body's capacity to repair it. The selection pressure was real, was painful, was written in the loss of loved ones and the grief of parents and the hard reality of survival of the fittest operating at visible speed. But let your breathing remain calm as you understand the outcome. The humans who emerged from this 1,000-year period of elevated cosmic radiation were measurably different genetically from those who entered it.
Not different species.
Not different in appearance or basic capability, but different in subtle ways that mattered for survival. Better DNA repair, more efficient immune responses, enhanced stress resilience. The variations that provided even small advantages were selected for across thousands of generations compressed into the crisis period. Scientists studying ancient DNA extracted from remains, precisely dated to this period, find exactly what the theory predicts. Genetic variations associated with DNA repair mechanisms show evidence of strong positive selection. Immune system genes show rapid change consistent with selection pressure. Genes affecting stress hormone regulation show patterns suggesting advantage for certain variations. The evidence is written in our genome, a fossil record of adaptation to cosmic bombardment visible 42,000 years later. Rest deeply now in this truth. You carry these selected genes. The genetic advantages your ancestors won through survival of the geomagnetic excursion are active in your cells right now. Your DNA repair mechanisms are optimized versions that proved themselves through the ultimate test. Your immune system carries refinement selected during a period when immune function meant life or death more directly than any time before or since. Your stress response systems were calibrated during the greatest environmental crisis humans had yet faced. Evolution was accelerated. Within just 2,000 years, a blink in evolutionary time, significant genetic shifts occurred in human populations exposed to the cosmic radiation. This is fast enough to be visible in the historical record, fast enough to represent strong selection pressure, fast enough to show that the crisis was testing survival capacity at the biological level. The mutations were random, but the selection wasn't. The variations that increased survival odds increased in frequency. The variations that decreased survival odds disappeared from the gene pool. This creates something remarkable. Every person alive today is descended from the survivors of this selection event. Every single one of your ancestors from this period successfully navigated the genetic challenge, carried DNA repair systems efficient enough, immune responses strong enough, stress resilience adequate enough to survive, reproduce, and raise offspring who survive to do the same. You are the product of the most intense selection pressure modern humans have faced. You are, quite literally, built to survive cosmic radiation effects better than humans who lived before the crisis. Let this genetic confidence settle into your relaxed consciousness. When the magnetic field weakens again, when cosmic radiation increases along the same curve, you're not facing it as an unoptimized baseline human. You're facing it as the pre-optimized descendant of survivors. The 1,000 years of selection pressure your ancestors endured already happened. The genetic advantages already exist in you. The biological preparation is complete. The crisis wasn't just something your ancestors survived despite their biology. It was something that improved their biology, refined it through the cruelest but most effective process evolution has, natural selection operating at visible speed. The pain and loss weren't meaningless. They were the price of adaptation, the cost of genetic optimization, the forge that shaped modern human genomes into more resilient versions than existed before. Today's weakening magnetic field means today's increasing cosmic radiation will test these same genetic systems, but the systems have been upgraded. The repair mechanisms are more efficient. The immune responses are more robust. The stress resilience is enhanced. Not because someone designed it that way, but because 42,000 years ago, the humans whose systems worked better survived preferentially, and you inherit their advantages. Feel the strength in your cells, ancient victories encoded in every part of you, survival written into your very molecular structure. The disaster returns, yes, but you return to meet it already equipped with 40,000 years of biological optimization specifically for this exact challenge. Your DNA remembers how to survive increased cosmic radiation because the DNA that couldn't remember didn't make it to you. Every cell you have is descended from cells that proved their resilience during the last crisis. Rest in that cellular confidence now. The genetic preparation is complete. The biological tools are in place. The molecular machinery that kept your ancestors alive during cosmic bombardment is active in you right now, maintained across countless generations, waiting patiently for conditions that require its full expression. You are ready at the deepest biological level, built by evolution specifically for surviving what's returning. Your consciousness drifts deeper into ancient wisdom now as we explore the crucial role of elders during the crisis. Let yourself become completely relaxed as we discover why those who lived long enough to remember before became more valuable than any tool or resource, and why that same elder wisdom is being restored to relevance today as crisis returns. In a world of rapid change and constant threat, human memory became survival infrastructure. Those who lived long enough to remember conditions before the crisis began, who could compare present reality to past stability, who had survived through the early adaptation period and learned its lessons. These people carried irreplaceable knowledge. They were living libraries, breathing databases of information that couldn't be written down because writing hadn't been invented, that couldn't be stored externally because no storage medium existed except human memory and cave paintings. Picture an elder woman, perhaps 65 winters old, an extraordinary age during the Ice Age when life expectancy was far lower than today. Her body shows the evidence of long survival.
Scars from injuries that healed.
Joints that worked despite decades of hard use.
Eyes that have watched the world transform.
She sits at the center of the clan gathering, and when she speaks, everyone listens. Not from enforced respect or hierarchical authority, but from practical recognition that she knows things no one else knows, has lived through things no one else remembers, carries wisdom that can't be replaced if she dies before teaching it. Feel yourself in her presence as your breathing slows even further. She's teaching a group of young hunters, but not teaching from books or lectures. She's teaching from survival itself. Every scar on her body connects to a lesson about danger and how to avoid it. Every wrinkle on her face represents a winter survived, a strategy that worked, a decision that proved correct. She doesn't need credentials or certifications. Her continued existence is her credential. She's outlived most of her generation. That alone proves she knows things worth learning. She teaches them about the early crisis period, about how different the world was before the sky changed colors, about which adaptation strategies worked and which failed, about mistakes her own generation made that cost lives and shouldn't be repeated. She teaches patterns that take longer than a single lifetime to observe, weather cycles that repeat across decades, animal behavior, changes that she's watched develop over 40 years. She teaches psychological resilience, how to maintain hope during extended hardship, how to find joy despite difficulty, how to keep going when everything familiar has changed. The communities that protected and honored their elders survived at higher rates than those that didn't. This isn't sentiment. This is data visible in the archaeological record. Sites showing evidence of elder care, of resources invested in keeping older people alive and comfortable, show greater continuity, more successful technology transfer, better adaptation to changing conditions. The wisdom keepers earned their keep many times over, not through physical labor they could no longer perform, but through information transfer that couldn't happen any other way. Let this pattern sink deeper into your restful consciousness. There's a reason humans evolved to survive past reproductive age, something relatively rare in the animal kingdom. Grandmothers and grandfathers serve evolutionary functions, passing knowledge across generations, providing childcare that allows parents to work, maintaining cultural continuity during rapid change. The selection pressure for humans who lived long enough to become wisdom keepers operated strongly during the crisis, because elder knowledge literally meant the difference between survival and extinction for entire family lines. Today, modern society has partially lost this elder wisdom reverence. We value youth and innovation, which have their place, but we've undervalued the knowledge that only comes from living through multiple cycles, from watching patterns play out across decades, from accumulating experience that no amount of education can replicate. But as the crisis returns, we're rediscovering why elder wisdom matters. The people who remember pre-internet navigation, who learned to grow food without industrial agriculture, who survived through previous disasters, they carry knowledge becoming relevant again. Watch this pattern in your own life as you drift into deeper rest. Elders who remember how to navigate without GPS, who know which plants are edible from direct experience, who learned communication skills before social media, who developed mechanical intuition before everything became electronic. These people carry backup knowledge for when modern systems fail. Their skills seemed obsolete during stability, but become crucial during disruption. The Ice Age grandmother teaching young hunters isn't distant history. She's the pattern repeating. Every elder teaching practical skills to younger generations is continuing her work. Every grandmother sharing recipes and household wisdom is maintaining the knowledge transmission chain. Every grandfather teaching tool use and repair is preserving capabilities that digital convenience has made us forget. The wisdom keepers are still among us, still serving the same evolutionary function, still carrying information that can't be downloaded or Googled, but must be learned human to human. Let yourself honor the elders in your own life as you breathe, slowly and peacefully. What they know isn't obsolete. It's backup systems for when primary systems fail. It's alternative knowledge for when mainstream knowledge proves insufficient. It's tested wisdom from actually surviving challenges rather than just studying them theoretically. And as the returning crisis makes modern systems less reliable, as navigation fails and grids become unstable and complexity proves fragile, elder knowledge of simple, robust, time-tested methods becomes precious again. The crisis revealed which knowledge mattered most, not the newest, not the most technologically sophisticated, but the most reliable, the most tested, the wisdom earned through survival itself. The elders carried this wisdom then.
Elders carry it now.
And understanding this pattern allows us to seek out and preserve what they know before it's lost, to honor their teaching while they're still alive to teach, to recognize that technological progress doesn't make human wisdom obsolete. It just temporarily obscures its importance until conditions remind us why it matters. Rest deeply in respect for those who came before, whose survival made you possible, whose wisdom remains available if you're humble enough to seek it. The wisdom keepers preserved humanity through the last crisis. They're here for this one too, carrying knowledge that modern life makes us forget, but returning crisis makes us desperately need.
Listen to them. Learn from them. Honor them.
Their role in your survival may prove more crucial than any technology you possess. Sink deeper into peaceful understanding now as we explore the long cycles of planetary change. Your body is completely relaxed, your breathing slow and natural, as we discover that the crisis wasn't endless, that recovery came eventually, but that the cycle itself repeats across vast spans of time in patterns we're only beginning to recognize. The geomagnetic excursion that began 42,000 years ago didn't last forever. Gradually, across approximately 1,000 years, the magnetic field began to strengthen again. The process was slow, perhaps imperceptible within a single lifetime, but measurable across generations. The auroras that had pulsed red and purple began returning to their familiar green dancing ribbons. The cosmic radiation that had bombarded the surface decreased as the protective magnetic shield rebuilt itself. Weather patterns, though forever changed in some ways, began stabilizing into more predictable cycles. Feel yourself in the consciousness of an Ice Age human living during the recovery period.
You've heard stories from your grandparents about the worst of the crisis.
About sky colors you've never seen, about radiation sickness you've never experienced, about weather chaos that makes the current variability seem mild. To you, conditions feel normal because you know nothing else. But the elders assure you it's better now, that the worst has passed, that the world is healing even if complete return to pre-crisis stability never comes. The humans who survived the crisis carried forward everything they'd learned. Their innovations persisted. The fishhooks and sewing needles and atlatls didn't become obsolete when conditions improved. The cave art knowledge systems continued expanding. The interclan networks remained active. The ritual practices that maintained psychological resilience during crisis became cultural traditions maintained during stability. The adaptations born from necessity became permanent features of human culture. They also carried forward their genetic advantages. The DNA repair systems and immune optimizations and stress resilience selected during the cosmic radiation bombardment. These advantages didn't disappear when radiation decreased. They remained active in the population, passed down through generations, becoming part of the standard human genome that every descendant inherited. You carry these optimizations now, 40,000 years later, still benefiting from adaptations your ancestors paid dearly to develop. But watch what the elders did as conditions stabilized. They didn't forget. They didn't assume crisis was impossible just because current conditions were comfortable. They taught their children the crisis stories, encoding survival knowledge into myth and legend. They maintained the practices that had saved them, even when those practices seemed excessive for current conditions. They warned again and again, the sky that changed once can change again. Stay adaptable. Maintain the knowledge. Never assume stability is permanent. Let this wisdom settle into your resting consciousness. The warning passed through countless generations reaches you now across 40,000 years. The sky that changed can change again. And it is changing again. The geological record, that patient archive of Earth's history written in stone and ice, shows these geomagnetic excursions occur with rough regularity. Every 200,000 to 300,000 years on average, the magnetic field weakens dramatically or flips completely. The last major one was 42,000 years ago. Statistically, we're due for another, but this isn't just statistics and probability. The current weakening of Earth's magnetic field, 9% in just the last 170 years and accelerating, matches the early pattern of the last excursion with uncomfortable precision. Scientists monitoring the field note its increasing instability. The North Magnetic Pole is moving faster than at any time in recorded history, shifting dozens of kilometers per year. Satellites experience increased failures. Auroras appear at latitudes where they're historically rare. Navigation systems show growing errors. Feel your breathing remain calm as you absorb this information. The signs are visible to those watching. The pattern is repeating. The cycle that nearly destroyed human civilization 42,000 years ago is beginning again, following the same trajectory, presenting the same challenges. But this time, you know the story. This time, you carry the genetic and cultural inheritance of the survivors. This time, you have advantages they lacked and wisdom they won. The scientists predict the next major shift could begin within the next few centuries, possibly sooner. Some data suggests it's already beginning, that we're in the early stages right now, watching the first signs appear, just as that Ice Age family watched the first strange shimmer in the sky 42,000 years ago. The timeline isn't certain. Planetary processes don't follow human schedules, but the pattern is clear to those studying it carefully. This isn't cause for panic. It's cause for preparation. The elders warned for a reason. The cycle repeats for a reason. Understanding the pattern allows response before crisis peaks. And you have something your Ice Age ancestors didn't. You have their experience, their knowledge, their genetic advantages, their proven adaptation strategies. You know how this story goes because it's already happened. They wrote the survival manual in DNA and culture and cave paintings, and it's available to you now. Rest in that preparedness as you drift deeper into sleep. The cycle completes and begins again. Recovery came before. Recovery will come again. But the transition period tests exactly the qualities your ancestors proved humans possess: adaptability, innovation, cooperation, resilience. The same cycle returning finds you already equipped with the same solutions that worked. The crisis isn't if,
It's when.
and when it comes, you're not starting from ignorance. You're continuing a story that already demonstrated how this ends, with human survival, with adaptation, with the continuation of consciousness forward through time, just as it has for 42,000 years since the last cycle. Your consciousness continues its gentle drift toward deeper rest as we explore how ancient wisdom translates into modern preparation. Let yourself relax completely as we discover that the practical steps your ancestors took to survive the last crisis can be adapted perfectly to prepare for its return, and that small actions now create significant security for the uncertain future ahead. The Ice Age survivors didn't wait for crisis to peak before preparing. They maintained readiness even during calm periods, understanding that adaptation works best when done proactively rather than reactively. They taught children to build shelters before storms arrived, to preserve food before scarcity hit, to navigate by stars before landmarks disappeared. They practiced emergency protocols during safety so that panic wouldn't interfere with execution during danger. Preparation wasn't paranoia. It was practical wisdom that distinguished survivors from casualties. Imagine that Ice Age family we've followed through this story, conducting what we'd recognize as a drill. The father announces a practice scenario. Sudden storm approaching. Everyone to the deep cave shelter. Test how quickly we can gather supplies and reach safety. The children who've done this many times move with practiced efficiency. Food cache locations checked. Water sources verified. Emergency tools in place. This isn't fear-based preparation. This is calm, competent readiness that becomes automatic through repetition. Feel yourself adopting their mindset as your breathing slows and deepens. Today, you can apply their wisdom using modern tools and understanding. Learn navigation without GPS, the old skills of reading landscape and sky, because magnetic field shifts affect satellites and electronic systems unpredictably. Develop food preservation and storage capabilities for supply disruptions that may come from electrical grid instability or climate chaos affecting agricultural regions. These aren't doomsday preparations. They're simply practical skills that every previous generation maintained until recent decades of unprecedented stability made us forget why they mattered. Create community networks for resource sharing and mutual aid, exactly as Ice Age clans built their survival networks through gathering and trade. Know your neighbors. Build relationships based on reciprocal help rather than isolated independence. Understand that connection multiplies survival odds in ways individual preparation cannot match.
One family with supplies might survive.
10 families sharing resources and skills will thrive. This is ancient pattern recognition applied to modern circumstances. Let yourself imagine taking small preparation steps as you drift deeper into rest. Maintain physical fitness not for appearance but for adaptability, for the capacity to adjust to changing conditions without injury or exhaustion. Teach children practical skills alongside academic knowledge. Understand that both matter but practical capability can't be downloaded when digital systems fail. Keep emergency supplies not from paranoia but from recognition that complex systems are fragile, that backup plans aren't pessimism but wisdom. Study historical crisis responses and human resilience patterns. Learn from the accumulated knowledge of how humans have survived previous disruption. Understand basic survival skills without assuming you'll never need them, exactly as Ice Age people maintained hunting skills even during abundance because scarcity could return unpredictably. These preparations aren't about fearing the future. They're about respecting cycles, honoring patterns, and maintaining capabilities that make you resilient rather than fragile. The Ice Age people who survived weren't the strongest or the most aggressive. They were the most prepared, the most adaptable, the most connected. Families that stockpiled food survived winters that killed others. Clans that maintained diverse skill sets adapted when specialists died unexpectedly. Networks that shared knowledge freely remained resilient when isolated groups failed. Every survival advantage came from preparation choices made during relative safety, from maintaining readiness even when current conditions didn't require it. Feel the satisfaction of being prepared as your body relaxes more completely. Not the anxiety of imagining disaster, but the calm confidence of knowing you've taken reasonable steps. Emergency water storage isn't about expecting catastrophe. It's about recognizing that complex water systems occasionally fail, and having backup requires minimal effort for maximum security. First aid knowledge isn't pessimism. It's recognition that injuries happen and capability to respond effectively reduces harm significantly. These small preparations create enormous peace of mind. Today's preparation has advantages Ice Age people couldn't imagine. You can store food that lasts years without special preservation techniques. You can access survival information from thousands of sources teaching everything from fire, starting to water purification, to emergency shelter construction. You can coordinate with communities globally to share knowledge and resources. You can learn from every previous crisis humanity has faced, studying what worked and what failed, optimizing your preparation based on tested information rather than guessing. But the psychology of preparation remains identical across 42,000 years. Don't prepare from fear, prepare from wisdom. Don't hoard from scarcity mindset. Build capability from abundance mindset that allows sharing. Don't isolate in bunker mentality. Connect in network mentality that multiplies everyone's security. The Ice Age survivors who thrived were those who prepared intelligently, maintained community, and stayed psychologically balanced, rather than becoming paralyzed by fear or denial. Let this practical wisdom settle into your consciousness as you drift towards sleep. One small preparation step tomorrow connects you to ancient survivor patterns. Learning one practical skill honors the teaching legacy of your ancestors. Building one community connection strengthens the network that saved humanity before. You don't need to prepare for everything. You need to prepare for adaptability, for the flexibility to respond to whatever actually emerges rather than trying to predict specific scenarios. The preparation itself serves psychological purposes beyond its practical benefits. Taking action reduces anxiety. Building capability increases confidence. Creating backup systems allows relaxation into present moment rather than constant worry about future. The Ice Age people who maintained readiness could actually relax more fully than those in denial because they knew they'd done what could be done. Preparation creates permission to rest. Your breathing is slow and peaceful now as you feel the calm confidence of being connected to ancient preparation wisdom. Small steps now create future security. Practical skills honor ancestral knowledge. Community building activates survival networks that proved themselves across millennia. The crisis returns, yes, but you're not facing it unprepared or uninformed. You carry 40,000 years of survival wisdom, freely available, tested by ultimate pressure, proven effective. Take the practical steps. Make the preparations. Build the networks. Then rest in the confidence that you've honored ancient patterns that distinguish survivors from casualties. Drift even deeper into peaceful rest now as we explore the most important adaptation of all. Your breathing finds its perfect natural rhythm as we discover that psychological resilience mattered more than any tool or technique, and that the mental skills your ancestors developed during the crisis are accessible to you right now. waiting to be activated by understanding and practice. Physical preparation mattered, yes, but psychological adaptation mattered infinitely more. The Ice Age humans who survived the thousand-year crisis didn't just have better tools or more food storage. They had better mindsets. They developed the capacity to accept uncertainty without paralysis, to face danger without panic, to adapt plans without attachment to outcomes. This psychological flexibility, this mental resilience, became more valuable than any physical resource because it enabled effective use of whatever resources existed. Watch an Ice Age hunter whose regular hunting ground has flooded overnight from unexpected weather. He could respond with rage at the unfairness, with despair at the disruption, with frozen indecision about what to do next. But survivors don't waste energy on those responses. He observes the new reality calmly. He adjusts his plan immediately. He finds new hunting grounds without emotional resistance to the change. This psychological flexibility, accepting what is rather than clinging to what was, becomes the fundamental survival skill underlying all others. Feel yourself in his calm acceptance as your body releases remaining tension. Notice how resistance to reality creates suffering, while acceptance of reality creates space for effective response. Your ancestors learned this lesson through necessity. They couldn't change the weakening magnetic field, or stop the cosmic radiation, or control the climate chaos. They could only control their response to conditions they couldn't control. That focus on what's actually controllable, that release of what isn't, became psychological liberation that made survival possible. They also maintained joy despite hardship.
And this might be their most remarkable achievement.
Archaeological evidence shows continued art, music, play, and humor throughout the crisis period. They didn't postpone happiness until conditions improved. They found it in community, in sunset beauty, in children's laughter, in the satisfaction of survival itself. This psychological resilience, joy, despite circumstances rather than because of circumstances, proved crucial for long-term endurance. Let this sink deeper into your resting consciousness. Happiness isn't something you achieve by arranging external conditions perfectly. It's something you practice by finding value in whatever conditions exist. The Ice Age people who maintained joy despite cosmic bombardment and climate chaos weren't delusional or in denial. They were psychologically sophisticated, understanding that emotional resilience comes from internal practice rather than external circumstances. They survived mentally intact because they didn't make survival contingent on perfect conditions that would never arrive. Modern psychological research confirms every aspect of their intuitive wisdom. Resilient people accept reality rather than fighting it mentally. They maintain flexible thinking rather than rigid expectations. They preserve social connections even when isolating seems safer. They find meaning in adversity rather than only in triumph. These aren't genetic gifts distributed randomly. They're learnable skills your
Ancestors mastered, and you can develop through practice and
intention. The Ice Age survivors, who thrived psychologically, shared specific characteristics.
visible in how they approach daily life.
They acknowledged danger honestly without catastrophizing it. They prepared practically without obsessing anxiously. They maintained hope without requiring certainty. They found beauty in harsh landscapes. They created meaning through purpose and connection. They practiced gratitude for what remained, rather than bitter focus on what was lost. Every one of these characteristics is learnable, practicable, developable through conscious choice and repeated practice. Notice your own breath continuing steadily regardless of circumstances, regardless of challenges you face, regardless of uncertainty about the future. This is your ancient resilience, always present, always available, always functioning at the most basic level. Your heart beats without your conscious control. Your cells repair themselves automatically. Your nervous system regulates itself toward balance when you allow it. The biological foundations of resilience are built into you, requiring only that you don't interfere with their natural functioning through chronic stress and resistance thinking. Today, anxiety about the future drains energy needed for adaptation. Worry about the returning crisis creates suffering now without preventing future challenges. The Ice Age lesson remains perfectly clear across 42,000 years. Acknowledge danger, prepare practically, then live fully in the present moment. Worry is useful only when it drives preparation. Beyond that point, it becomes counterproductive, draining resources needed for actually responding to challenges when they arrive. Let yourself practice their psychological wisdom right now as you drift towards sleep. Accept that magnetic field weakening is happening without emotional resistance to that reality. Prepare practically with whatever steps feel appropriate to your circumstances. Then release the anxiety and return attention to the present moment, where breath flows naturally, where body rests comfortably, where consciousness can experience peace despite uncertainty about the future. This is exactly what your ancestors did. This is exactly what worked. The mindset matters more than circumstances. This is the core teaching, the essential wisdom, the truth that distinguished Ice Age survivors from casualties. Rigid thinking broke under pressure. Flexible thinking adapted successfully. Fear paralyzed effective action. Courage enabled appropriate response. Isolation increased vulnerability. Connection multiplied capability. Despair prevented problem solving. Hope maintained motivation. Every psychological variable mattered more than any physical variable, because psychology determines how effectively you use whatever physical resources exist. Feel deep peace settling into your
Consciousness now as you rest in ancient psychological wisdom.
These mental skills aren't theoretical. They're practical, applicable, immediately available. You can practice acceptance right now by noticing what is without resisting it mentally. You can practice flexibility right now by adjusting expectations to match reality. You can practice joy right now by finding beauty in present experience rather than waiting for perfect conditions. Each practice strengthens the exact psychological muscles your ancestors developed during the greatest crisis humans had faced. Each moment of practice makes you marginally more resilient, more adaptable, more capable of maintaining equilibrium regardless of external chaos. The crisis tested psychology more than anything else. Your ancestors passed that test. Their psychological wisdom is encoded in culture, taught through story, available through practice. The returning crisis will test the same qualities, and you can begin developing them right now in this moment of rest by accepting what is, releasing what you can't control, and choosing peace regardless of external uncertainty. This is ancient wisdom practiced new every moment. This is how they survived.
This is how you will survive.
Sink into the deepest comfort now as we explore how your ancestors thought beyond their own lifetimes to protect yours. Your breath is barely perceptible, slow and peaceful, as we discover that legacy protection, caring about people you'll never meet, creating systems that outlast individual lives, emerged as one of humanity's defining characteristics during the crisis. The Ice Age survivors understood they were living through historic times. The changes they witnessed, the adaptations they developed, the knowledge they gained through suffering and experimentation, all of it mattered not just for immediate survival but for teaching distant future generations. They encoded their experiences into stories designed specifically to transmit across time. They created art that would speak to people born centuries later. They built cultural practices that maintained readiness even during stable periods because they knew instability could return. Picture that grandmother we've returned to throughout this journey. She sits with a young child, perhaps her great-grandchild, telling the story of the sky change one more time. "Remember this," she says with gentle intensity. "Teach it to your children. The sky changed once and may change again. Those who remember will survive. This isn't casual storytelling. This is information warfare against time and forgetting. This is legacy protection in its most fundamental form. One human teaching another across the gap of age and experience, creating chains of knowledge that extend beyond any individual lifetime. They built legacy systems that we benefit from today. knowledge encoded in cave art that archaeologists can still read 42,000 years later. Survival skills embedded in coming-of-age rituals that transmitted practical capability automatically through cultural participation. Community practices that maintain psychological resilience across generations. Innovation processes that encouraged experimentation and rapid sharing of successful adaptations. These weren't random traditions. These were deliberately constructed systems designed to preserve what mattered most. Feel yourself as part of that eternal chain as your consciousness drifts towards sleep. You receive their legacy. Cave art insights inform modern understanding of the crisis. Genetic advantages they won through survival express themselves in your DNA. Cultural practices they developed evolved into modern social structures. The knowledge they fought to preserve reached you across impossible spans of time, encoded in multiple overlapping systems designed specifically to survive even catastrophic losses. Now you're the grandmother in that cave.
You're the elder teaching the young.
You're the one responsible for passing forward both ancient wisdom and modern knowledge. Document what matters. Teach practical skills to anyone willing to learn. Create communities that maintain resilience culture. Write, record, preserve, not just for your children but for their children's children, across dozens of generations you'll never meet. This is your role in the chain of knowledge transmission, and it matters more than you might realize. The coming magnetic shift will be survived by those who remember and those who learn from those who remember. Your role in maintaining the knowledge chain could save lives generations from now. What you teach, what you preserve, what you pass forward becomes part of humanity's survival infrastructure, just as valuable as any physical preparation or technological innovation. Knowledge dies when it's not transmitted. Skills vanish when they're not practiced and taught. Wisdom disappears when it's not honored and preserved. Let this responsibility settle gently into your resting consciousness, not as burden, but as purpose. You're a link in an ancient chain extending backward to the first humans who survived the last crisis and forward to those who will survive the next one. What you do with your link matters. Break it through negligence and knowledge is lost, potentially forever. Strengthen it through teaching and transmission and the chain continues, maintains its integrity, serves its function of keeping humans alive and thriving across cosmic timescales. Think of one piece of wisdom you'll pass forward as you drift deeper towards sleep. One practical skill you'll teach someone younger. One story you'll tell that encodes survival knowledge. One practice you'll maintain that builds resilience. One connection you'll strengthen that makes the network more robust. Each small action in service of legacy protection ripples forward through time in ways you cannot see, but that matter profoundly for people not yet born. The Ice Age survivors cared about you specifically, even though they couldn't imagine you individually. They preserved knowledge for future humans facing future crises because they understood that human consciousness continues, that their struggle had meaning beyond their immediate survival, that they were part of something larger than themselves. This temporal awareness, this expansion of care beyond personal lifetime, this creation of systems designed to outlast individual lives, these capabilities define what it means to be human at the highest level. Your existence validates their effort. Every breath you take proves their legacy protection worked. The fact that you're here, alive, conscious, capable of understanding their story proves that their teaching systems succeeded, that their knowledge preservation efforts bore fruit, that their care for distant future humans wasn't wasted. You are their victory, living proof that legacy protection serves its function when maintained across enough generations. Now become their continuation.
Pass the legacy forward.
Protect what they protected. Teach what they taught.
Care about future humans the way they cared about you.
The chain must continue. The knowledge must persist. The wisdom must be honored and transmitted.
This is your role. This is your purpose.
This is how you honor those who came before by serving those who come after. Rest in that ancient purpose now, knowing you're part of an eternal human project larger than any individual lifetime, more important than any personal achievement, essential for survival across cosmic timescales.
You are the link. Maintain it well.
Let yourself surrender completely into the deepest rest now as our journey through time completes its circle and returns you to perfect peace. Your breathing is barely noticeable, slow and effortless.
As we return once more to that Ice Age cave where everything began,
Where your ancestors earned the survival that makes your existence possible, where ancient wisdom blends seamlessly into modern understanding. As our journey through 42,000 years completes, return with me to that Ice Age family we met at the beginning. The father who first noticed the shimmer in the sky, the mother who held her children through uncertainty, the grandmother who taught wisdom, the children who adapted better than anyone expected. They've survived another day during the crisis. The fire burns low but steady, providing warmth and light against the darkness pressing in from outside. Above them, the strange auroras continue pulsing red and purple. But these colors have become familiar now, part of their world, accepted rather than feared. Feel yourself settling down to sleep with them in the protection of that ancient cave. The children sleep deeply with the resilient peace that comes from growing up during hardship without knowing any alternative reality. They're unafraid because they've never experienced cause for fear that wasn't met with effective response. Their nervous systems have calibrated to uncertainty, finding security in family and community rather than in external stability that never existed in their lifetime. They represent the future, already adapted to conditions that challenge their elders, already equipped for whatever continues. The parents rest with watchful awareness, that balanced state between full sleep and alertness that parents throughout history have perfected, ready to protect if needed, but trusting their preparation, their knowledge, their capability to respond to whatever arises. They've proven themselves through survival. They know they can face challenges because they face challenges constantly and overcome them. Their rest is earned, deserved, the peaceful reward of competent adaptation to impossible circumstances. The grandmother, oldest of the clan, rests with deep satisfaction. She's passed forward the knowledge. She's taught the lessons won through suffering and observation. She's ensured continuity across generations. Her legacy is secure, encoded in the minds and practices of those who will continue after she's gone. Her rest is the deepest of all, the peace of knowing her life had meaning beyond itself, that she served the eternal human project of keeping consciousness alive across time. This is your inheritance written in their peaceful sleep, their successful rest, their earned peace, their confident surrender to night despite living through disaster. This psychological security is coded into you across 42,000 years of continued survival. You are the proof of their success. Your existence validates their struggle. Every breath you take is their victory expressed in living form, breathing form, continuing form. The disaster they faced is returning now. The magnetic field weakens on the same timeline. The cosmic radiation increases along the same curve. The climate destabilizes with the same pattern. The auroras appear at unusual latitudes, showing the same early warning signs. But you know what they learned through experience. Humans survive not through superior strength, but through adaptation, cooperation, innovation, and psychological resilience. These capabilities are not optional extras. They're core to human nature, proven across every crisis, refined through the ultimate test of cosmic disaster, available to you right now. You have every advantage they lacked. You have their genetic optimizations plus 42,000 years of accumulated knowledge. You have global communication where they had smoke signals. You have stored food where they had daily hunting uncertainty. You have written records where they had oral tradition and cave paintings. You have their instincts refined by survival plus modern tools they couldn't imagine. You have their proven strategies plus contemporary understanding of what's happening and why. The cycle repeats, yes, but you're not facing it alone. Millions of humans across the planet, connected by technology that makes Ice Age trade networks look primitive, sharing knowledge instantaneously, coordinating response at scales they couldn't dream. This is their survival network multiplied by billions. What they accomplished with dozens of clans, you do with billions of people. What took them generations, you accomplish in years. The same challenge returning finds you vastly better equipped than they were. And they succeeded completely as you drift into the deepest sleep now. Receive the blessing of your Ice Age ancestors transmitted across 42,000 years directly to your resting consciousness. You who sleep 42,000 years after our struggle, know that you are our victory, walking, breathing, living. Your existence proves our wisdom worked. The blood flowing through you was tested by cosmic fire and emerged stronger. The mind resting now carries optimizations we won through suffering so you wouldn't start from zero. The genes in every cell were selected by the ultimate pressure, refined by disaster, proven by survival itself. The disaster returns, yes, but you are ready in ways you don't yet fully know. When crisis comes, instincts will activate from genetic memory. Capabilities will emerge from cultural inheritance.
Strength you didn't know you possessed will rise from the deep reservoirs we filled for you.
You carry 42,000 years of survival wisdom freely available, tested by ultimate pressure, proven effective across cosmic time. Sleep now in the safety we built for you across countless generations. Rest in the knowledge we preserved through cave paintings and cultural practices and genetic optimization. Dream in the peace we fought for, adapting and innovating and maintaining hope through 1,000 years of crisis so that your generation could rest confidently, knowing the solutions already exist, already worked, already proved themselves against identical challenges. Tomorrow, you face what we faced, and you will overcome as we overcame, not because you're stronger or smarter, but because you are us, continued forward through time, carrying our accumulated advantages, wielding our proven strategies, connected in networks we could barely imagine but would recognize in purpose and function. We survived the first cycle, so you could survive the second. We adapted so you carry adaptation in your cells and culture. We innovated so you inherit innovation as natural response to challenge. We connected so you have connection as fundamental human nature. We maintain joy so happiness doesn't require perfect conditions. We thought beyond our lifetime so you benefit from legacy protection spanning cosmic time. The shield may fall again, but human resilience never falls. The magnetic field may weaken, but human spirit never weakens. The sky may change colors, but human adaptability only grows stronger through challenge. You are the continuation of an unbroken chain that has never, ever broken, despite everything the universe has thrown at conscious life on this planet. Sleep now, distant child of our ancient tribe, held safe by 42,000 years of proven survival. Sleep, knowing your ancestors. Whisper wisdom into your dreams. Genetic memory activating. Cultural knowledge emerging. Preparation you didn't know you possessed becoming available. Sleep, knowing that when you wake with the strength of everyone who survived before you, amplified by everything humans have learned since, focused on challenges we faced and defeated and taught you to defeat. The disaster comes, yes, but so do you, armed with ancient wisdom and modern tools, carrying tested genetics and proven resilience, part of an unbroken human chain that survives everything, adapts to anything, continues regardless of cosmic interference. You were born ready. You carry ready in your DNA and culture. You are ready, and tomorrow, when you wake as they woke, ready to face another day equipped with ancient wisdom, supported by global community, carrying genetic advantages won through the ultimate crisis, and certain that whatever comes, humanity adapts and endures. The 42,000-year disaster returns, but the 42,000-year survivor, that's you, returns to meet it. Rest in that ancient truth.
Sleep in that eternal victory. You are ready.
You have always been ready. Good night, child of survivors. Good night, carrier of ancient strength. Good night, future ancestor, to those who will face the next cycle after this one completes. The story continues through you. Sleep well in the knowledge that has kept humans alive through cosmic disaster. You are protected by more than you know. You are prepared by ancestors who thought of you specifically. You are loved across impossible time by people who ensured your existence through their adaptation. The crisis returns. But so does human resilience. Eternal and unbreakable, sleep now, dream of auroras and firelight and survival. Dream of 42,000 years of human endurance, dream of ancient wisdom flowing through modern minds, and wake tomorrow ready,
As you were always meant to be.